When my dad's best friend said I was such a bad mother that I should give my baby up for adoption, I revealed a secret about him that shocked everyone. My dad's friend said I was a terrible mother, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I publicly humiliated him. Now my dad is demanding that I apologize. But there's more to the story. I was 18 and in college when I first met my dad's friend, Harold. Right away, he treated me with disrespect. When he found out I was studying medicine, the first thing he said was, "Oh, so you think you can save the world? How cute. Little 18-year-old thinks she can change the world." My dad laughed, and when I glared at him, he just said Harold's comment was funny. From then on, every time I saw Harold, he would insult me. He made fun of my clothes, called the books I read childish, and even made a rude comment about my past in volleyball, saying I probably only liked it because I could wear tight outfits around boys. My dad never stood up for me. The last straw came when Harold interrupted me at a barbecue, telling me I didn't know how to cook and physically pushing me out of the way. After that, I tried to avoid him for 6 years. Yesterday was my dad's girlfriend's birthday, and I went with my fiancé and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there, and even though I hadn't seen him in years, he still treated me like a clueless child. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping, but when he woke up hungry, I went to breastfeed him. When I came back, Harold started making jokes, saying I was probably a terrible mother. He then started questioning my parenting and calling me a bad mom in front of everyone. I finally lost it when he asked if I had considered giving my baby up for adoption. I shouted at him, asking how he could judge me when his ex-wife had full custody of his own child. I then exposed a secret, that he tried to sleep with his brother's girlfriend. To top it off, I told him to lose some weight and that no woman would want to touch him with that gut. I left with my fiancé and son after that. On the drive home, my dad kept texting me, demanding I come back and apologize to Harold. I refused and asked my dad if he knew what Harold had said to me. My dad yelled, saying Harold had just offered to make me a sandwich, which made me laugh. My dad had been in the bathroom the whole time, so he didn't hear anything that actually happened. He only saw me yelling and leaving the room. When my dad asked why I was laughing so much, I first told him it was nothing, but when he asked again, I said Harold was lying and that I wasn't going to explain. I told my dad he should call Harold himself to find out. I then called him out for always taking Harold's side whenever he upset me. I told my dad it wouldn't surprise me if he just blindly believed Harold again and ignored what I was saying now. My dad hung up, and I didn't hear from him the rest of the night. My fiancé told me he was really proud of me, saying my comments were not only bold but also hilarious. I was glad he felt that way. Update 1. First, I want to address a common assumption. Some people think Harold has feelings for me. I don't think so. His comments were always annoying and condescending, but they never seemed suggestive. Still, your support made me feel better, and I was touched by how many people were on my side. I did feel a little bad about what I said, but I don't regret standing up for myself. I think I felt bad because it meant I'd stopped keeping the peace after so many years. It took a while for the relief to set in. Honestly, I'd wanted to confront Harold ever since the barbecue incident. That's when my feelings about him changed from I don't like him to I can't stand him. The day after my first post, my dad actually called Harold, which surprised me. When my dad asked Harold what really happened, Harold hesitated before admitting the truth. He took a minute to respond and then said, "Oh, I know." Harold tried to explain to my dad that he was just concerned about me becoming a mom so young and that he didn't mean any harm. I knew what I was doing, and while Harold apologized to my dad, I didn't believe his excuses. The next day, my dad told me about the call and said I should forgive Harold for what he called an honest misunderstanding. He also thought I should apologize because I overreacted by telling Harold I hated him over something small. A lot of Harold's rude comments happened in front of my dad, but my dad was usually too distracted to notice them. He doesn't pay attention unless something directly involves him or makes him angry, and even then, he'll probably forget about it later. We also have different ideas of what's offensive, so my dad never saw Harold's comments as a big deal. I told my dad that I wasn't exaggerating when I said I hated Harold and that the adoption comment was just one example of many. I reminded him of all the condescending things Harold had said to me over the years, including at the party. My dad didn't remember any of them. I made it clear that I've hated Harold for years and that I had no reason to apologize. I also told my dad that I won't be attending any events Harold is invited to. I don't expect my dad to stop being friends with Harold, but I won't be around him anymore. I said I would ask in advance if Harold is coming, and if my dad lies, I'll leave. My dad called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I'd been avoiding Harold for 6 years, and no one even noticed, so clearly it wasn't a big problem. I told him I don't have to like his friends any more than he has to like mine. After some back and forth, my dad agreed to my terms. Yesterday, my dad mentioned that Harold was upset, but I just ignored it. I'm not cutting off my dad completely, though I've come close in the past few years. Moving out has made things easier, and since we only see each other a few times a month, it's manageable. My dad doesn't complain as much about me not calling or texting anymore. I don't see the point in going no contact with him since he no longer has any control over my life. Instead, I'm focusing on raising my own child differently and learning from my dad's mistakes. My relationship with my dad is still rocky, and I don't trust him to babysit because he tends to fall asleep on the couch. I pushed him to start therapy when I got pregnant, and he finally started in June. His behavior has improved a lot, especially with me and my younger sister, who still splits time between our divorced parents. I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops going to therapy. This is the first time in my life that my dad has made real progress, and while it's hard to be hopeful, I'm trying. If I ever do cut ties with him, it won't be because of Harold. That's the whole story. I'm relieved I no longer have to pretend or hide things. My relationship with my dad is rocky, but I'm not going to dwell on it. My main focus is on my son, my fiancé, and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. Update 2. Avoiding Harold has been going well. My dad has been respecting my boundaries. Whenever he invites my husband and me over for lunch or dinner, I ask who else will be there. If Harold is coming, my dad tells me, and he hasn't lied so far. He also doesn't push when I say I'm not coming. Since my last post, I've only seen Harold once. At my dad's birthday party a few months ago. Yes, I knew Harold would be there, but my dad promised Harold wouldn't talk to me. Also, some of my dad's friends' kids, who I used to babysit and love, would be there. I wanted to see them more than I wanted to avoid Harold. I spent most of the party with my son and the kids, and Harold didn't speak to me at all, so I guess my dad kept his word. My husband and I noticed Harold staring at us a few times, but I chose to ignore it. At one point, I saw my husband staring back, and the sweet guy I married actually managed to look intimidating. I love him for that. You know who did talk to me? Harold's girlfriend. Yes, he has one now. She came over twice. First, she came to look at my son and then made a comment about how he needed a haircut. Great start, right? Later, she came up to me again and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said no, and she laughed, saying, "Yeah, you're shy," as if she was talking to a child. I held back my reaction, but I wanted to tell her I wasn't shy. I just preferred spending time with the kids because they were better company than her and Harold. Based on these interactions, Harold's girlfriend is just as unbearable as he is, so they're perfect for each other. I don't have much else to add. My dad broke up with the woman he was dating last year and now has a new girlfriend. She's not annoying or crazy, and I actually like her, though I don't think they'll last a year. My relationship with my dad still isn't perfect, but it's better. He's been apologizing to me more often, which is surprising. Maybe it's the therapy, or maybe motherhood has made me more intimidating, but I'll take it. To be fair, he's a really good grandfather, and I appreciate that. I'm also glad my dad is respecting my boundary with Harold because I definitely don't want him in my life anymore. Update 3. A few months passed, and everything had been going well. My dad was sticking to the boundaries I set about Harold, and I wasn't dreading family events anymore. I'd attend dinners with my fiancé and son, and we'd have a good time without any issues. I really thought I was done with Harold. Then came my dad's birthday. It was supposed to be a simple dinner, and I made sure to ask if Harold was going to be there. My dad reassured me that Harold wasn't invited, and I felt relieved since I didn't want to deal with him. Everything was fine at first. My dad was happy, his girlfriend was being sweet, and it was nice catching up with family friends. But a few hours in, guess who walked through the door? Harold, and he was drunk. I gave my dad a look, and he seemed just as surprised as I was. He hadn't invited Harold. Turns out Harold heard about the party from someone else and showed up unannounced. He was loud, obnoxious, and made everyone uncomfortable. I stayed away from him, focusing on my son and talking to friends. I figured we'd leave early if Harold got too annoying, but as the night went on, Harold got worse. He made snide comments to people, mostly to my dad, but I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. At one point, I overheard Harold drunkenly tell my dad, You should have brought someone else's kid instead of hers. At least then you'd have a chance at decent grandkids. I froze. I wanted to scream at him, but I stayed calm, focusing on my son and fiancé. I thought if I ignored him, he'd stop. Then things got dangerous. My dad was at the grill, and Harold, in his drunken state, decided to take over. He shoved my dad out of the way and ended up knocking the entire tray of food onto the ground. Everyone was staring. I was just waiting for my dad to do something, but he tried to laugh it off like Harold was just being himself. That was the final straw. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed over and yelled at Harold, telling him he needed to leave. He smirked at me like it was all a joke and said, "Oh, little miss knows best, huh? You think you're all grown up now with your perfect little family?" I'd had enough. I snapped and told Harold I was done with him. I said, "You've been an arrogant, disgusting jerk for years, and if you think I'm going to let you treat me or my family like this anymore, you're delusional. Get the hell out of here." Harold just stared at me, not even trying to defend himself this time. My dad finally stepped in, and for once, he was on my side. He told Harold, "You need to leave now." Harold was shocked and tried to laugh it off, but my dad didn't budge. He repeated, "Leave, Harold, you've crossed too many lines, and you're not welcome here anymore." Harold stumbled out, and after that, my dad apologized to me. This time, I could tell he was serious. He admitted he'd been wrong to let Harold get away with so much for so long. For the first time, he chose me over Harold. It wasn't just words either. My dad hasn't spoken to Harold since.
Tracy returned from the parent meeting completely upset. It was an autumn evening. Drizzling rain and a cold wind pierced through her. But it was even colder inside. It hurt and was offensive. And the problem was not that her 13-year-old daughter Celeste did not understand math. No, that was a problem too, of course, but it needed to be fixed, not cried over. Besides, the class teacher whispered to Tracy the phone number of a good tutor for Celeste. In fact, Tracy's mood worsened when Celeste's teacher, Mrs. Bell, suggested organising an event for Grandmother's Day. All parents supported this enthusiastically. Some had one grandma, others had two. Tracy remained silent. She had no one to invite. Her husband's parents died several years ago. As for her mum and dad, well, the word dad never existed for Tracy because he wasn't in her life. And her mum? Here, it was more complicated. She was alive, but she didn't exist for Tracy. Of course, she gave birth to her, but it would have been better if she hadn't. That's what Tracy used to think, until she escaped from the hell she had lived in since birth. The young woman was walking along a dim street, remembering her bitter childhood. Tracy remembered herself at the age of 5, somewhere. She was born and raised in a small village. She really wanted a doll back then, in a bright dress with lush curls. Her friend had one like that, and Tracy somehow told her mum about it. "A doll?" Her mother chuckled and said rudely, "It's more than you deserve. Draw a doll on the paper and cut it out." "Oh, you are really shameless. Your mother feeds you, shoes you, and dresses you, and you're still not satisfied." The mother shouted a lot then, including insulting words towards Tracy. The girl didn't quite understand their essence, but she only understood that these were nasty words. Perhaps the softest one was brat, and throughout her childhood she heard it most often from her mother's own lips. "Hey, brat, why did you wash the floor so badly?" her mother would ask her when she came from the farm, and Tracy was so offended. At 8 years old, she tried to clean the house after school to please her mother, but instead of gratitude, she heard things like that. "Hey, brat, why are you making a face?" She heard it at 13 from her drunken mother. Tracy never argued with her mother and tried not to talk back to her because she knew that if something happened, she could beat her with a stick. The girl didn't understand why her mother treated her like that. At 14, she couldn't take it anymore and asked why her mother didn't love her. "But why should I love you?" Nina shouted angrily. "You've ruined my whole life." But Tracy couldn't understand what her fault was. She had lived only with her mother since birth, She didn't know her father, but can that be her fault? Neighbour Mrs. Shane, a kind old woman with whom the girl could discuss her problems, once told her a story about her mother. Nina was previously married to a calm and hard-working Sam. They lived modestly, both worked on the farm, and everything was good for them. But Nina couldn't get pregnant, and Sam really wanted a child. So Nina decided to cheat on him, thinking that it wasn't her problem. At that time, there were some workers in their village who were renovating a farm. Nina got involved with one of them. She thought no one would find out. Just a couple of times she would run off to a hotel with her lover near the farm canteen when Sam was out in the fields. But the affair dragged on, and her lover turned out to be a blabbermouth. And soon, almost the whole village knew their secret. Sam found out everything. He didn't try to work things out with Nina. He just gathered his things and left the village. Where and why, nobody knew. Later it was said that he was working up north and that he died when his tractor crushed him. Nina was lost at first. She even cried that her husband had left her, but then she calmed down. Meanwhile, her lover moved in with her. Only by winter did he go back to his family in the distant South City, and Nina was left to deal with the aftermath. She was able to conceive a child, but did she really want him now? Nina went to the hospital, but they sent her away. It was way too late to do anything except give birth. Then Nina decided to leave her daughter at the maternity ward. But what would people say? She was ashamed. So she returned to the village with Tracy from the hospital, but maternal love never appeared, and with each passing year, she grew to hate her own daughter more. She blamed her for the failed marriage, for Sam's death, and for the fact that no decent man wanted to marry Nina anymore. Eventually, she started drinking, and her anger toward her daughter only grew. "You, little girl, must be patient," Mrs. Shane admonished Tracy after her story. "A mother is a mother. You can't choose her. Soon you'll graduate and then go to town, where you'll find a room to rent and get a job, even if it's just cleaning floors at a cafe or a hospital. Your mother won't bother you then, but for now, endure." Tracy listened and nodded in response. She understood why Mrs. Shane was sending her to the town instead of the city. It was easier to live there without support, but how hurtful it was. Nina herself made a mess of things, but she blamed her daughter for everything, and maybe Tracy would have taken Mrs. Shane's advice. But one incident changed everything. One summer, Nina brought another boyfriend home who was also her drinking buddy. They drank and had fun in the kitchen, but then the man started shouting at Nina, saying that she was ugly and old and that her daughter was the real beauty. Tracy had just turned 17 at the time. She sat in the next room, huddled in a corner, afraid to move. Hearing these words, Nina got furious. She kicked the man out and then attacked her daughter with her fists. Tracy had dealt with her mother's abuse before, but this time Nina was completely out of control. She hit her as hard as she could. Tracy managed to escape and run to Mrs. Shane. The elderly woman comforted her, and they cried together. That night, Tracy decided to run away from the village. She didn't want to go to the nearest town, as Mrs. Shane had suggested. She knew her mother would find her there and never leave her alone. Tracy wanted to go to the city, especially since she read in the local newspaper at the post office about a recruitment for students, and they provided dormitories. Tracy snuck into her house at night. Hearing her mother snoring, she breathed a sigh of relief. She wouldn't wake up until morning for sure. She quietly gathered her belongings, documents, and went to Mrs. Shane to confess her plans to her. "Oh, you poor thing," sighed the elderly woman. "How will you get to the city, and how will you live there? You don't have any money." "No," admitted Tracy, "but I will try to sneak onto the train. I know people do it that way." "Uh-huh, they do," snorted Mrs. Shane skeptically, said, "and then the police catch them. Well, maybe you'll make it to the city. But do you have anything to live on when you get there?" "I'll work," replied Tracy. "Yes, but what will you live on until your first paycheck?" said the elderly woman. Then she thought for a moment, sighed and went to her bedroom. She rummaged in the wardrobe for a while and then took out some bills for Tracy. At that time, it should have been enough for a month. "Oh, Mrs. Shane, you shouldn't do it," blushed Tracy. "I should, and I won't." Mrs. Shane said it firmly. "Go away from here, my dear. Maybe you can change your own destiny." "Thank you," whispered Tracy emotionally. "I'll pay you back. When I earn it, I'll pay you back." Mrs. Shane smiled gently and shook her head. Early in the morning, Tracy took the scheduled bus to the district town, and from there she took the train to the city. Everything went as planned. She got into school, found a place in the dormitory, and even found a job, cleaning the common areas in the apartment buildings. She only broke one promise. She never gave the money back to Mrs. Shane. The kind-hearted woman died in the fall of that year. Tracy learned about this from her mother, who came to visit her daughter for the first and last time. It turned out that Mrs. Shane had told Nina where Tracy had gone. But Nina came not because she was worried about her daughter. No, she wanted to take Tracy home because she needed free labour to clean the house, look after the chickens in the yard, work in the garden, and do other chores. Fortunately, the school administration, seeing Nina and realising her secret motives, did not give her daughter back. Besides, Tracy firmly decided that she would never return to her mother. She had enough of her mother. Now she was alone and on her own. Yes, it was not easy for her at first in the big city, but Tracy tried her best. She studied and worked. She got a job at a factory after school and rented a tiny apartment with her friend. And then she met Brian, a good guy who worked as a mechanic at the factory. They got married and started living together. For the first time in her life, Tracy felt that she was not alone, and that she now had support and safety in the form of a close person. Tracy and Brian moved to Brian's parents when the factory closed, and everyone was kicked out on the street. Brian's parents were just happy that their son and daughter-in-law would live with them. They were good people, and they helped Tracy greatly when their granddaughter Celeste was born. They were like parents to Tracy, and she was totally devastated when they were killed in a terrible accident. A truck crashed into a bus stop and both of them died. A lot of time has passed since then. Celeste had grown up. Brian had found a good job on a construction site, and Tracy herself worked as a salesperson in a grocery store. They led a simple life without luxury, but they were happy and satisfied. The most important things were the love and respect in their family. Tracy never thought that she would become a good wife and loving mother, as she had no role model growing up. But it turned out that way. However, Tracy tried not to think about her mother. All she knew was that Nina continued to live in the same village, drinking and not thinking about her daughter. If anyone asked about Tracy, Nina would cover her with foul language, saying that she was ungrateful and ran away, abandoning her mother. Tracy learned about this from her former classmate Helen, who still lived in the village and was Nina's neighbour. Her husband was a farmer who built a house nearby. Returning home from school, Tracy remembered all of this. Yes, I seem to have a mother, but I don't. She'd never seen Celeste at all. What kind of grandmother is she? Yes, it's a pity that Celeste will have to participate in the class event as little as possible. Others will sing songs to their grandmothers or read poems, and Celeste simply had no one to do it. She will be upset. She is very emotional. Brian met Tracy in the hallway, and the most delicious aromas were coming from the kitchen. "We're frying meatballs with Celeste," Tracy's husband announced happily, and he kissed her on the cheek. "Why are you so gloomy? Did something happen at the meeting? Did Celeste misbehave?" "Everything is fine," Tracy said with a sigh. "We just need to do something about math." She decided to tell her husband about the upcoming event later. They had dinner, Celeste ran to her room, and Tracy finally shared her worries with her husband. "Oh, come on," Brian shrugged. "It's not like our daughter is the only one growing up without a grandmother. Mrs. Bell is a wise teacher. She'll find her role. As a leading person, for example. Yes, you're right. Tracy nodded. I'm probably exaggerating everything. You just remembered your story. Brian hugged his wife and stroked her head like a little girl. My girl, forget everything. I'm here. Celeste is here too. And we love you very much. And I love you, Tracy whispered in response. As it turned out, Tracy had worried for no reason about Celeste. She was given the role of host, and the event went great. Although there was a moment when Tracy saw sadness in her daughter's eyes. Celeste knew nothing about Nina or Tracy's childhood, because Tracy decided to spare the girl's psyche and only said that she hadn't talked to her mother in a long time. But everything changed on a Saturday evening in November. After a bath, Tracy decided to lie down with her phone and open a social media page. She saw a message from Helen, her former classmate. "Hello, Tracy," Helen wrote. "Your mother had a stroke yesterday and was taken to the hospital. I thought you should know. I found her on the street and called an ambulance. The doctors said she'll live, but you know that after such an illness it takes a long time to recover." "Well, let her recover," whispered Tracy. "What are you whispering about?" mumbled a sleepy Brian. "Are you chanting some mantra or what?" "If only," sighed Tracy, explaining what was happening. "We have to visit her, unexpectedly and decisively," said Brian, as if waking from a dream. "Tracy, she's your mother." "A mother who hated and treated me like a stray dog?" bitterly said Tracy. "Brian, I can't forget anything, and I can't forgive her either." "I understand it's difficult, but what else can we do?" "Helen said there's no threat to her life. She'll recover and start drinking again," angrily said Tracy. "What's going to happen to her?" "And if she doesn't recover?" her husband asked cautiously. "Tracy, we should look after her, so we don't blame ourselves later." "I won't even think about it," grunted Tracy, and turned back to him, trying to fall asleep. But sleep wouldn't come. She remembered her childhood, offences and insults. Could something like that be forgiven? For the following days and weeks, Tracy stubbornly pretended that nothing had happened, although thoughts of her mother and how she was doing didn't let her rest. Helen regularly wrote, telling her that Nina was still in the hospital. Brian asked about the news, but Tracy made excuses, saying that she was still in the hospital. And then Helen wrote that her mother had been discharged. "Tracy, I understand that you have difficult relationships with your mother and that you have reasons not to love her, but she's still your mother," wrote Helen. "You should see her now. She can barely walk and she speaks with difficulty, and it's already winter outside. We, the neighbours, are helping her as much as we can. We're heating up the house and bringing her food. But we have our own work. Understand it. If there was a social worker, it would be no problem, but there's none in our village. Maybe you'll pay someone to take care of your mother?" After reading the last sentence, Tracy protested aloud. Pay for her mother? They themselves weren't doing well, and she didn't have extra money. Tracy remembered the money that the late Mrs. Shane had given her to settle up in the city. Not her mother, but a neighbour. She also remembered how she cleaned floors at night to earn bread, and how she ate that bread, which was the cheapest and sometimes stale, drinking it down with water, and her mother didn't care about her. "She won't get a penny from me," hissed Tracy. Brian heard this and raised his eyebrows, asking what was going on. Tracy read him the message from her classmate. "But she's right," he nodded. "We need to find someone to help your mother." "So that she can pour her drinks?" Tracy got angry. "That won't happen." "Tracy, she's had a stroke. She probably won't be able to handle the drinks," doubted Brian. "But she's still your mother. She's alive. If my mother were still alive in this world—" "Don't compare!" Tracy cut him off sharply. "Your mother was a wonderful woman. She was like a mother to me, and my biological mother called me a brat and other nasty names. You can't imagine how painful it was to hear." "Forgive her." "I can't and I won't. I'd rather call the district social services office today and ask about the nursing home. Let her live there." Tracy and Brian were unaware of Celeste's approach to the door. However, the girl heard everything her parents were saying. "Mum," the girl suddenly spoke, "so you want to send your own mother, my grandmother, to a nursing home? Is that even possible? You didn't communicate with your mother for many years, and you didn't tell me anything about her, and now you want to get rid of her?" Tracy turned sharply at her daughter's voice and blushed. She didn't want her daughter to know everything, but what could she do now? "Sweetheart," Tracy said anxiously, "you're still young, and there are many things I can't tell you, but believe me, it will be better this way." "Better for whom?" Celeste cried. "For you? You don't ever think that I might send you to a nursing home too someday?" "What are you saying?" exclaimed Tracy. "Celeste, you can't judge me right now. This woman only gave birth to me, and then she only insulted me. I ran away when I was 17 because she beat me, and her drunken suitors harassed me." After saying this, Tracy fell silent, realizing that perhaps she shouldn't have told her daughter all of this. Celeste, who had grown up with love and care, could hardly believe that her own mother could act this way. But that was a long time ago. Maybe she had repented. The child suddenly said sensibly. Repentance. For some reason, Tracy didn't believe in it, but her daughter's words planted a seed of doubt. For the rest of the evening, she couldn't stop thinking about her mother. No matter what, she was still her own flesh and blood. "Let's go to the village tomorrow," Brian suggested as they were going to bed. "We won't decide anything yet. Let's just go and see how your mother is living." "Okay," Tracy unexpectedly agreed. The next day, Brian took a day off work. Tracy changed shifts, and they set out in their old car. Tracy was lost in thought all the way, wondering what had happened to the village. She hadn't been there for so many years. And most importantly, how would the meeting with her mother go? If she tried to insult her in any way, she would send her to a nursing home without a second thought. Over the years, the village had become dilapidated and smaller. Many houses were empty. Only Helen's house towered like a giant, and nearby was the old hut. Tracy's heart tightened. Her childhood home. No matter how badly she had lived there, it was still exciting. The courtyard was covered with snow, and only a thin trail indicated that people sometimes came there. The wooden door creaked heavily when Tracy pushed it open. The woman froze for a second and then entered the hallway. Everything was cluttered and dirty. Tracy involuntarily grimaced. Her mother had let everything go. Clearly they hadn't cleaned in years. Tracy was shocked. She touched the radiator. It was cold. The woman peeked into the bedroom, and she didn't immediately recognize her mother among the pile of rags on the bed. Finally, the pile moved, and Nina emerged from underneath. Her mother had become a complete old woman, thin and yellowed. Tracy felt sorry for her for some reason. She wanted to chase away that feeling, but she couldn't. "Hello, Mum," Tracy whispered quietly. Nina muttered something in response, then pushed aside the rags and sat down on the bed with difficulty. "Tracy," she said, barely audible. Did you recognize me?" asked Tracy in a trembling voice. "Of course, my dear," Nina replied, more clearly but slowly. "It's just that I didn't expect to see you." "But I came. Meet my husband, Brian." Brian nodded in response, visibly confused by what he saw. "You also have a granddaughter," added Tracy. "Her name is Celeste." "I know," Nina happily smiled. "Helen told me and showed me a photo on her phone." "I see," Tracy replied dryly and harshly. "So tell me what happened to you. Have you drunk yourself to a stroke?" She sat on a stool, brushing off the dust, and looked into her mother's faded eyes. Nina shrugged and lowered her head. "You're right, my daughter. I'm to blame for everything," she muttered, and then she sobbed and burst into tears. "Tracy, forgive me," she said, wiping her tears from her wrinkled face with a trembling hand. "I'm so guilty in front of you. This is my punishment for mistreating you. I only recently realized how wrong I was. I took out my grievances on you and drowned the pain in alcohol. I ruined my life with my own hands." Tracy listened to her mother and remained silent. She suddenly realized that there was no resentment, only pity for this unhappy old woman. "Okay, Mum, that's enough tears. Let's get ready." "Where to?" "To the nursing home. Helen told me it was the only place for me." Nina lowered her eyes and fell silent. "No," Brian suddenly broke the silence. "We'll go to our place. We have 3 bedrooms in our apartment. There's space enough for everyone, and you can't be left unattended." Tracy looked at her husband with surprise. After all, he was always a wise and kind man. Perhaps that's why she loved him. "Just remember my words. If you drink and are rude, I won't put up with it," she told her mother. "I understand. I won't do anything bad anymore. I'll listen to you in everything," Nina whispered, and then added, "Thank you, and forgive me." Tracy didn't say anything in response. They collected Nina's meagre belongings with Brian, put the old woman in the car, locked the door to the house, and set off for the city. Tracy drove, occasionally glancing at her silent mother in the back seat, and realized that she was doing everything right, as a human being should. There is a time for everything in life. Yes, not everything can be forgotten, but you have to learn to be wiser. Tracy closed her eyes. Ahead was the road home, and then a long journey of forgiveness. Rob sat by the window, absent-mindedly staring at one point. Today marks a year since his beloved wife Lynn passed away, and he still couldn't believe it. A sudden heart failure ended the life of the young woman and became a real tragedy for Rob. Memories didn't give him peace, and every time took him back to the happy times when they were together. Rob met Lynn right after his graduation from medical school. This chance encounter in the park turned the young man's measured life upside down. Lynn came from a village to conquer the city, dreaming of becoming a fashion designer. For now she worked as a seamstress and rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts. Rob's heart melted from the kindness, tenderness, and genuine sincerity of the provincial beauty. They only talked for a week, but Rob, falling in love like a boy, realized that Lynn had completely captured his thoughts. After several meetings, he proposed to her. The couple lived soul to soul for 8 years. The only thing that upset the young family very much was the absence of children. The cause of infertility remained unknown until the end. Just after the wedding glasses rang, the newlyweds were already dreaming of 2, or better yet 3 children. But it didn't happen. Examinations and treatment in clinics did not give results. Despite everything, Lynn and Rob did not lose hope. They also dreamed of their own house by the lake, spacious and cozy. All hopes and dreams collapsed when Lynn's heart stopped. And Rob was not at home then. He was not even in the city. The young doctor had been on an internship abroad for almost a year. Video calls with his wife didn't stop for a day, but the distance between them played a cruel joke. It became even more painful to think that Lynn never complained about her health. And as they say, nothing foreshadowed trouble. With the death of his wife, Rob was left only with warm memories and, of course, photos where they were both alive and looking at each other with loving eyes. The man returned to the photos on his phone every day and couldn't get enough of them. Every shot seemed infinitely familiar and priceless to him. Rob had long wanted to create a large album of their family photos with Lynn, as in the old good times. Finally today he decided to start this. First he needed to select the best photos for the album. Rob turned on the old laptop that Lynn liked to spend time with and began to upload photos from his phone to the screen. Suddenly, in the corner of the screen, he accidentally noticed a folder called Favorite Moments, created by his wife. He opened it and was stunned. He had not seen these shots before. Rob seemed to relive the touching moments in which he and Lynn were captured. "Thank you, dear, for everything," he whispered. Suddenly the man came across a strange shot where his wife was sitting on the bed, holding a large children's toy car in her hands. "Oh, that's unexpected. We don't have children's toys, although we really dream of having a child in our family. Well, maybe she went to a friend's birthday who has a child and bought a toy for the occasion," Rob guessed. Looking closely at the image in the photo, he noticed a sheet of paper lying on the edge of the bed. He zoomed in and saw that it was not just a sheet, but a photo of a little boy. Strange. Why did she need this? Rob wondered. The next shots made him shudder, and a lump rolled to his throat from suddenly overflowing tears. In one of the photos, Lynn was not alone, but with a young man, and in another photo they hugged, standing together with the same child as in the previous photo. Did Lynn have a second family, and did she hide it from me? I can't believe it, Rob exclaimed in frustration. He closed the laptop in despair, unable to look further. He couldn't sleep at night. A feeling of bitterness and incomprehension had robbed Rob of his peace. It was only in the morning that he was able to forget. He dreamt of Lynn. At first she was in his arms, but then she turned into a bird and flew away. Rob woke up with a broken heart and a headache, unable to think of anything else but yesterday's photographs. Rob and Lynn had always had a golden rule, never to pry into each other's personal belongings. Even after Lynn's death, Rob didn't allow himself to break the established tradition. Lynn's things remained in their usual places. However, curiosity and emotional turmoil didn't allow Rob to calm down. In the end, he couldn't resist and opened the drawer of the writing desk where Lynn kept her personal documents. It was hard for him to look at things that her delicate hands had once touched. He didn't even realize how he would live without his beloved. This pain was sharper than a razor and unlikely to ever dull. Unexpectedly, among the other documents, a child adoption form caught his eye. "Oh my God, what is this?" Rob exclaimed. Lynn never mentioned adoption. They still had hope of having their own child, and everything would have worked out if... A wave of despair washed over Rob. This was always the case when he remembered their shared dreams and plans that were never meant to come true. One thing Rob knew for sure was that Lynn would never have made an important decision alone. All questions concerning the two of them were decided together, but something made Lynn sign the adoption form. "What should I do? How difficult it is without you, Lynn, but I must find out everything." Rob's heart told him that his wife was going to tell him something important, but she didn't have time. Adoption, where could it be? Rob wondered. Well, of course, in an orphanage. This would be our next step with Lynn if the doctors gave us the final verdict that we couldn't have children. The decision to go to the orphanage came lightning fast. The man didn't put it off. Time flew by unnoticed during the journey, and now Rob was standing at the doorstep of an old and shabby orphanage building. "Who are you here to see? Do you have an appointment?" the guard asked harshly, looking down. "I am here to see the director. I need to talk to her," Rob replied confidently. "Well, I don't know. We're very strict about this, and we don't just let anyone in from the street. But wait a minute, I'll call her on the phone," the guard replied. His sense of responsibility was clearly not in question. "You're lucky you came just in time. Mrs. McGuinness is still here, and she is willing to see you. Go up to the second floor. The director's office is on the left down the corridor." "Hello, how can I help you?" said the middle-aged woman with a pleasant appearance and a very kind smile that could melt any heart. These are the people who should work in an orphanage, Rob thought. "Young man, "Are you here about adoption? What's your name?" the director asked again, sensing that the visitor didn't know where to start the conversation. "I'm sorry, I was lost in thought. My name is Rob Dewar. Yes, about adoption. That is, not exactly," the man said, becoming flustered again. "Can you tell me if my wife, Lynn Dewar, came to see you last year? Let's take a look. We have records of visitors in our archive. I'm afraid I will disappoint you. No, she didn't come. Although many adoptions have been processed in the last year, there was also a refusal to take a child. A strange refusal," Mrs. McGuinness said significantly. "Why strange?" Rob was interested. "Well, because a woman without any explanation gave her own 8-year-old son to the orphanage. Usually we get refusals from maternity hospitals, children from troubled families or children whose parents die or died under different circumstances. And here, a living, apparently healthy woman just came and gave her child away. In my practice, it's almost the first time something like this has happened." Yes, how heartless people can be. Rob agreed with her thoughts. Suddenly the door opened and a thin boy ran in. His high-pitched child's voice filled the entire space of the large office. "Mrs. McGuinness, can I not go outdoors today? My tutor is making me, but I don't have time. I still need to finish my craft for the competition." As Rob looked at the boy, he felt as if he had been struck by an electric shock. He had seen this child somewhere before, and very recently at that. Oh my God, Rob realized this is the boy from Lynn's pictures that he was looking at yesterday and came here for. Rob was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the boy approaching him and staring at him with big grey eyes. Suddenly the boy asked, "Are you my dad by any chance?" Rob wasn't expecting such a question and was completely lost, not knowing how to answer. "Cody, go to your room. You can't interfere in adult conversations." "Okay, I'll allow you to skip the daytime walk today." Upon hearing these words, the boy smiled and disappeared behind the door of the office. Don't take it seriously. That's how kids in orphanages are. Regardless of their age, they dream of having a family. They see a dad in every man who comes and a mum in every woman. And this boy is special. He's the child I just told you about. He was placed in an orphanage without explanation. Rob turned pale and froze. He had many questions but no answers. Okay, someone put this child in an orphanage. But what does my wife have to do with it? How do I unravel this mess without you, Lynn? Mrs. McGuinness noticed the paleness and agitation. What's wrong with you? Would you like some water? No need, everything's fine. Please tell me, what's the name of the woman who gave Cody away to the orphanage? It's significant for me to know. The director looked at Rob in surprise. She couldn't understand why this strange man had come here and what he wanted to get here. She shouldn't just reveal confidential information to him out of the blue, but Mrs. McGuinness caught herself thinking that she didn't want to refuse him, simply because Rob didn't look happy and there was some inexplicable sadness in his eyes. So Mrs. McGuinness simply nodded in agreement. Okay, let me check. Found it. The woman who wrote a refusal for Cody is named Judith Rossi. Judith? Rob asked incredulously. Yes? Do you know her? No, I don't, he answered immediately, but he lied. Of course he knew Judith Rossi. She was his ex-girlfriend, the one before Lynn. Judith noticed him first in college and fell in love. Rob just got carried away, nothing more. He didn't fall in love with her, and Judith knew that, but didn't want to believe it. She tried every possible way to win the affection of the guy she liked. Rob, are you busy tonight? Maybe we could go to the theatre or a cafe together. And on weekends we could go to the countryside. There's such a fun group gathering there. What do you think? At first, Rob waved off Judith like a pesky fly, but one day he got tired of it and agreed to the girl's proposals, just to use her as a remedy for boredom. Then Rob met Lynn, fell madly in love, and completely forgot about Judith. The girl didn't give up without a fight and made many attempts to win Rob back, but all of them were in vain. Rob didn't want to hear anything. When Judith found out that Rob was getting married, she went crazy and shouted after him, "You'll regret it bitterly, and you'll never be happy." A few days later, the girl disappeared from Rob's life. He was very happy about it and immediately forgot about Judith. After all, he had a new life with his beloved Lynn. Now, years later, what happened between him and Judith flashed brightly in his mind, especially her last words. Rob was horrified because they really turned out to be prophetic. He rushed out of the orphanage like he had been scalded. A swarm of thoughts raced through his mind, which he couldn't put together. Lynn's ridiculous death, her photos with Judith's child, whom she gave to the orphanage. Try as he might, Rob couldn't understand or connect the events that had happened. One thing he knew for sure was that he needed to find Judith. Rob was almost certain that she held the key to the solution. Surprisingly, he still remembered Judith's address, tucked away in the corners of his memory. It was easy to find the old 5-story building that he hadn't visited in almost a decade. After a piercingly loud ring, a middle-aged woman opened the door and looked surprised at Rob. "Who are you looking for?" she asked. "Is Judith Rossi here? She used to live here," Rob replied, realizing that the woman in front of him was not Judith. "I don't know anyone like that, sorry," the woman replied. However, seeing the desperation on Rob's face, she added, "Wait, let me ask my husband. Maybe he knows." "Ben, have you heard of Judith Rossi?" A male voice came from the depths of the room. "Oh, Kate, have you forgotten? We bought this apartment from Judith Rossi about a year ago. And who's asking?" "Apparently nobody," the woman said, looking after Rob as he ran down the stairs. Outside, Rob sat on a bench and hugged his head, buzzing like a beehive from today's events. Well, that's a dead end. Where do I look for Judith now? And maybe no one needs to be searched for to find out, to dig up the past. Why, Lynn won't come back anyway. Yes, that's exactly what needs to be done, thought Rob. In a depressed mood, he returned home. Earlier, Lynn's cheerful laughter could be heard here, and the house was filled with comfort, warmth, and happiness. And now, what? Emptiness. The grey walls and ceiling pressed on Rob with terrible force. He collapsed weakly on the couch and immediately fell asleep. Lynn appeared in his dream. They were walking toward each other. Lynn was so beautiful in a long sky-blue dress, walking through a field strewn with wild flowers. She took a little boy by the hand. When Lynn reached Rob, she whispered only one word to him: "Don't give up." And then the girl disappeared, turning into flowers in the field. Rob woke up immediately and said to himself, "I won't give up, I promise, and it seems like I know what to do." He remembered his classmate, Sasha, who had dreamed of working in the police since school, and now he was a detective on especially important cases. That sign was on the door of the office where Rob went, not for service but for friendship. Sasha gathered the necessary information which, to put it mildly, surprised. Instead of the address of Judith's residence, he received information about her death from cancer about a year ago. Around this time, Judith gave her child to an orphanage. Rob also learned that Judith had an older brother named Peter, who was convicted of a series of thefts, served his sentence and lived in a settlement outside the city, and he was probably the only person who could tell what happened. Rob had no doubts about whether to go to Peter or not. The decision came on its own. He just took a ticket on the nearest train and went to the village. Peter's house was solid and strong, with a red roof, standing out from a row of identical grey houses. Rob stopped near the entrance to the house and looked at it curiously. "Do you like it?" A rough masculine voice was heard behind Rob. "I built it all with my own hands." Rob turned around and saw an unshaven, casually dressed man who did not look very friendly. "What are you standing there for, shifting from foot to foot? Come into the house if you've come," he said. "Yes, actually," Rob stuttered hesitantly, embarrassed by such a greeting, but followed the owner into the house. "Who are you?" Peter asked as soon as Rob crossed the threshold of the house. "I'm Rob." "Who?" Peter rudely interrupted him. "So you're the one who ruined my sister's life. You deceived the girl and left her. And you framed your wife, Lynn. I wanted to hate her at first, but I couldn't. She turned out to be a good person, but she didn't get what she deserved. And now, what brings you here? Do you want to mess with me? Of course you're happy with your life. You bathe in happiness, and I'm all alone, with a certificate from prison. No mother, no father, not even a sister. Get out of here." "I have no happiness. I had it, but now it's gone. Lynn died," Rob cried out in a strained voice. "How did she die? Did Judith's curse work? And where is Cody?" Peter turned sharply. Rob's face changed at these words. "Which curse? What Cody? What are you even talking about?" Peter looked puzzled at Rob. "Lynn didn't tell you anything, right? Maybe she didn't have time. Let's go to the kitchen, pour some drinks and talk," Peter said. "I don't drink," Rob refused. "It's okay. Today you will," insisted the man. "If they didn't tell you, then I will. I'll open your eyes so that life doesn't seem so rosy. Judith messed up a lot and drove herself to the grave, but you're still guilty of everything." Peter emptied his glass of whiskey, bit into a piece of black bread and continued. "When you left Judith, she completely lost it. She found a black magician and asked him to curse your family. She believed in this nonsense so much. She didn't want you to have children and dreamed of getting rid of your wife to take her place. She gave all her money to this charlatan. She even had to sell the car and take out loans. But it didn't bring her any happiness. She realized she was pregnant after your affair. She struggled penny by penny and worked as a cleaner and a janitor. I was in prison all that time, doing time, and couldn't help her in any way. I paced like a caged tiger, unable to escape." Rob listened, sometimes paling and sometimes blushing, and he couldn't believe that this was happening to him. Apparently the curse worked. They had no children with Lynn, and Lynn died suddenly as if someone had cursed her. Tears filled Rob's eyes. He poured whiskey into a glass and drank it in one gulp. "God, why? I didn't promise her anything. And Judith knew I didn't love her," he said. "Is her child really my son?" "Of course he's yours. Judith was faithful. She didn't want to hear about other men. And if you didn't love her, why did you sleep with her and just use her? And when she became unnecessary, you threw her away. That's what you got for everything." Seeing Rob's terrible condition, Peter added, "When Judith tried to punish you, she also punished herself. Suddenly she got sick and it turned out to be cancer. According to the doctor's prognosis, she had 3 months to live, but she lived for 6. We have no relatives, so not wanting to leave the child at the mercy of fate, Judith gave him to the orphanage. But her conscience ate her up. It's not godly to get rid of a child with a living father. At the last moment, she went and told everything to your wife." Suddenly, even Peter had a tear running down his cheek. "I was a week late. I was released, but I came not to her but to her grave. I was terribly sorry that my sister gave her child to the orphanage. But Lynn promised that everything would change soon. She was kind and compassionate, like an angel coming down from heaven. She said that as soon as you arrived from abroad, you would take your son. I arranged it and picked him up from the orphanage a couple of times on weekends. We walked in the park together. Cody was crazy about Lynn, and now there's no Lynn. The angel has flown away. Don't torture yourself, Peter. Thank you for everything." Rob couldn't listen any more.
Sharp pain pierced his heart and soul, a wound that couldn't be drowned out with vodka. It was like a bleeding wound. It healed with a thin crust and then flared up again with renewed force. Rob didn't remember how he got home. The shower brought him back to his senses. Its cold streams refreshed not only his body but also his thoughts. He still didn't know and couldn't imagine how his future life would turn out. But of one thing Rob was sure. He would take his son from the orphanage and raise him properly. That's what he wanted, and that's what Lynn wanted. Today he dreamed of his beloved again, but for the first time it was a happy dream. They walked together holding hands and smiling at each other. The next day Rob returned to the orphanage to see his son. "Cody," he called out to the boy, who was standing alone in the hallway by the window. The boy turned around and ran up to him. "I knew you'd come back, Daddy." The child's admission was the greatest reward Rob could ask for. He hugged his son tightly, and the boy hugged him so tightly that it seemed impossible to let go. "So, we'll live," Rob thought.
Travis Doe felt his eyes slipping shut. The boy yawned and put his hands under his head, getting comfortable on the piled-up carnival costumes. He didn't fight the pleasant feeling, falling into a warm, soft, feathered dream. His drowsy thoughts turned to the Santa Claus coat hanging somewhere in the wardrobe, left by their physical education teacher after yesterday's rehearsal. The coat could serve as a blanket, but he was too lazy to get up. The boy was in his usual place, a small room behind the assembly hall. While the school ensemble preferred to rehearse on stage or in the sports hall, this room was where the little artists changed clothes, practiced their roles, applied makeup, and waited for their time while peeking at the ongoing performances. Travis often stayed in this den after school to wait for his mother, Helen, the new music and culture teacher. She had been tasked with producing the holiday play and its musical accompaniment. For as long as Travis could remember, his mother adored participating in all school events, staying up late, working on scripts and planning costumes. This year she tried to convince Travis to audition, but he refused. Already unpopular with some of his classmates, so that he wasn't about to speed-run his social elimination by playing a wolf or bunny in the school matinee. Travis yawned again and turned onto his side, tucking his hand under his cheek. His secluded, dark corner smelled of wood shavings, cardboard and paint, remnants from the senior students' recent work on New Year's play decorations. His mother had conceived a New Year's fairy tale based on The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. In her adaptation, Dorothy and her dream team journeyed not to Emerald City, but to New Year's Land, seeking a festive mood stolen by an evil sorceress. With rehearsal still 2 hours away, Travis had time to sleep. He could have used the time productively, doing homework or studying for tomorrow's chemistry test, but sleep felt more urgent now. Just then the big door to the assembly hall creaked and groaned. Footsteps indicated 2 people entering. "Looks like we're first," a girl's voice said. "You stay here, please, then we'll go home." The boy's drowsiness vanished. He opened his eyes sharply, restraining himself from jumping up. The familiar voice made his heart race. It belonged to Brenda. Travis fidgeted, unconsciously touching his cheekbone, where a whimsical green frog band-aid covered a fresh wound. Brenda had applied it to him during the long break today, explaining, "I always carry a first aid kit because my little brother's always getting hurt. Sorry, but he only likes cartoon band-aids. And we're out of Spider-Man. Just frogs and unicorns left." Travis had only managed an awkward shrug in response. Brenda had been so close, He could have counted her eyelashes and spotted the light freckles on her cheeks, if he had dared to meet her eyes. Instead, he focused on the butterfly-light touch of her fingers on Travis's burning skin. Her fingers were slim and musical, cool and gentle. She smelled of fruity shampoo with a hint of school cafeteria. "That's it. Now you're good as new. Try to avoid fights, okay? Your mum would worry," Brenda had sighed, shaking her head. Travis gently touched the bruise. "Thanks," he nodded, still avoiding her gaze. "I'll tell her I fell at a physical training lesson. Again." The boy's confused expression betrayed how unconvincing this excuse had become. Since transferring to the new school, he seemed to have forgotten how to stay on his feet, regularly sporting black eyes. Brenda laughed. "Do you think Mrs. Doe believes that you're clumsy? Our gym teacher practically worships you. You're his best athlete. I bet Mr. Neville's New Year's wish will be for you to join the athletics team." She shook her head while putting away the first aid supplies. "You know, that's why all our guys are upset. Nobody likes being outperformed on all fronts." "Well, they'll have to get used to it," Travis snapped, unable to contain himself any longer. Brenda studied her stubborn classmate with interest. Travis had transferred to their class in September after his parents' divorce, when they sold their large apartment and went their separate ways. Travis's mother took a flat in a decent residential neighbourhood. It was smaller but cosy, with everything one could need nearby, from a supermarket and clinic to a school and beauty parlour. Helen Doe was sure that the move and change of scenery would be good for everyone. At first it was. Travis, while renovating his room, distracted himself from thoughts of his father's betrayal. The man had been living with 2 families for 2 years, and even had a small child there. Then September came, a time to go to a new school. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. Travis was handsome, cheerful and athletic. He played guitar, enjoyed basketball and studied well. Yet in the new school, such a talented guy wasn't welcomed by everyone. While the girls immediately noticed the newcomer, the boys began grinding their teeth, perhaps from jealousy, perhaps something else. Do high school boys really need a reason to fight? At that age, boys were like walking cans of petrol. Strike a match, say one wrong word, and flames burst out. Paul, the unofficial leader of the class, became Travis's main rival. Like a pack leader sensing competition, he began going out of his way to prove his superiority. Initially, Travis ignored his classmates' ridicule and antics, seeing them as childish and beneath his attention. But recently, Paul had managed to find Travis's weak spot. Travis's Achilles' heel became his mother, who was a music and culture teacher at his new school. The boy deeply loved her. She was a wonderful woman and a marvellous teacher who genuinely loved children and her work. Moreover, Mrs. Doe was young and stylish. No wonder high school students never missed world art culture lessons. Sometimes, though, they crossed boundaries. Paul would make crude jokes about the teacher. What started as hormone-driven teenage pranks escalated when Travis made a serious mistake. Upon hearing Paul discussing his mother, he attacked his classmate with his fists. Despite the beating Paul received, he didn't stop. Having discovered how to provoke the usually level-headed Travis, he began mentioning his mother more frequently. Today, after the world art culture lesson, Paul loudly commented about Mrs. Doe's new buttoned dress and his desire to undo it. Travis, walking behind, shoved his classmate hard, and the usual fight unfolded. The girls separated them. Brenda, the class president, was insisting they visit the medical office, but the stubborn boys, believing scars make men, went to class instead. That's why Brenda took the injured Travis under her caring wing at their shared desk. By the way, Brenda was the only person who tried to reason with Paul, always taking Travis's side. She'd also been the first person Travis met at the new school, having missed orientation due to illness. When he arrived at the teacher's room where his mother was, Brenda was there too. "Oh, Travis, perfect timing. Brenda, good, you're here," the class teacher said. "Travis is new to your class. Take him along, show him around, give him a tour." Brenda turned, studying the newcomer with interest. That's likely when it hit Travis. The once sociable boy became tongue-tied. His brain turned to mush, his limbs to cotton, and when Brenda smiled, openly and sincerely, he nearly had heart failure. Travis ended up sharing a desk with the class president, much to the other boys' displeasure. Brenda was known to receive the most Valentine's cards, yet remained down to earth. She was a good student, struggling only with algebra. Brenda was most passionate about school activities, participating in competitions, plays and concerts. This probably explained her quick rapport with Mrs. Doe. But interaction with the teacher's son proved challenging. Travis criticised himself for his behaviour, but couldn't help it. His brain ceased functioning around Brenda, along with every other organ. His lungs forgot to breathe, his heart lost rhythm, and his palms embarrassingly sweated. Now Brenda reached for a pencil that rolled between their chairs. They both leaned forward and bumped heads. She laughed, rubbing her forehead. Travis blushed, but retrieved the runaway pencil. "Thanks," Brenda nodded, then touched his forehead. "Are you feeling all right, Travis? Your face is red. They say flu's going around." "Give him a kiss into his tiny brain, Brenda," called Paul, watching jealously from the back. "If I must, I'll kiss you," Brenda grumbled, rolling her eyes. She withdrew her hand and stopped questioning Travis, busying herself with her bag. Travis noticed her ears turning pink. "Why not care about me, Mother Teresa? He split my lip. You should kiss me instead," Paul persisted. "No way," she hummed, tossing her long hair back. "You earned that." Brenda's honey-red hair was thick and beautiful. Travis had never noticed it quite like this before. Her eyes were tea-brown with darker flecks, like leaves swirling in a cup. Brenda and Paul continued trading barbs until the biology teacher entered. The students settled into their seats. "Quiet down, everyone. I know New Year's is approaching, but let's focus. We have a fascinating topic today, the basics of genetics," said the teacher. After the lesson, Paul, going out into the corridor for a break, pushed Travis with his shoulder and muttered in his ear, "Don't get too excited. Brenda is coddling you like a beaten puppy. Don't count on more than that. She was always too kind." Travis, not intending to waste his vocabulary on the bully, explained himself by gestures, showing Paul his middle finger. "Travis, what is this?" the teacher gasped, noticing the obscene gesture. "Nothing bad, miss," the boy found himself quickly. "The thing is that in Japan, the middle finger is not an insult, but a brotherly gesture. In the context of Japanese sign language, it means older brother. Paul has become like a brother to me. I wouldn't be surprised if we had been separated at the maternity hospital. He's such a warm-hearted and nice guy." There was laughter in the class. Paul turned green and pretended to vomit. "I'm certainly glad you have such feelings, boys, but remember, we're not in Japan." Karen Evans hummed, shaking her head and leaving the classroom. Travis hummed, and then he was clapped on the shoulder. Not hard, but in a friendly way. "Funny," Sam praised him with a smile. "I should take your story into account." Travis was surprised because usually Sam did not communicate with him. It appears that Brenda was right. The guys will get used to him. Later, Sam came again, asked to teach him to play the guitar. "I heard you play in the music hall. I would like to impress a girl, Jenny Harper." He was embarrassed. "Will you help me?" "No problem," Travis smiled. Travis's mood became a little better. After all, Brenda took care of him, and the guys began to thaw. Even the clash with Paul was no longer making him angry. However, the cherry on the cake was the appearance of Brenda in the rehearsal room. And why didn't he think that she would definitely want to participate in the play? What an idiot! He should have agreed to his mother's request. Travis froze, not knowing what to do. Come out of hiding? Wouldn't it look strange? From the den he could go out into the school corridor and then return to the assembly hall through the main entrance. Travis wanted to do so, but for some reason he froze, listening to the conversation between brother and sister. Yes, it was the younger brother Johnny that Brenda had brought with her to the rehearsal. Usually they walked home together, with Brenda always holding her younger brother's hand. Travis heard that the boy was only in the 1st grade. "Who are you going to play?" asked the child, sitting down in the audience chair. "Dorothy," answered Brenda. "It's the lead role." "Are you going to get a cake like last time? It was so delicious." The boy sighed dreamily. Brenda laughed. "No, they gave me a pie for winning a sports competition. Now I'm just going to play and please kids like you." It appears that she tickled her brother because Johnny giggled and then asked for mercy. "And is Christmas Eve coming soon?" the boy persisted. "Only a week left, just a little bit more." "Really? But we don't have a Christmas tree." The little boy was frightened. "And I haven't written a letter to Santa Claus. He won't know what I want." Brenda was silent for a moment. It was as if she were gathering her thoughts or even her strength. "Johnny, dear," she began in a strange tone, so unlike her usual cheerful talk. "We're not going to have a Christmas tree this year. We don't have a tree or ornaments for it." "What?" The 1st grader was frightened. "Brenda, but how could we? We used to have a Christmas tree. Why can't we decorate it?" Tears trembled in the boy's voice. Brenda sighed long. Travis, unable to bear it, got up from his peculiar recliner and went to the door to look through the crack. Brenda was squatting opposite her brother. He was sitting in an armchair, frowning at his sister. "Johnny, the Christmas tree was taken away from us. There's no money for a new one. They cost as much as an airplane wing, honestly, and the toys cost even more." "Who stole our Christmas tree? The Grinch?" the child wondered. Brenda smiled weakly, shook her head. "Alas, but no. Johnny, you don't need to think about it. You are small. You will not understand yet." Travis thought about it. His mother made him drag a huge artificial fir tree and heavy boxes with toys and decorations to their new flat. She simply adored New Year's Eve. He remembered how he had complained that the tree was too big and wouldn't fit in their new flat. "There's always room for a Christmas tree," Mum had parried then, smiling broadly. Meanwhile, the little boy sniffed. "No, I'm adult. Who took our Christmas tree? Tell me, please." Brenda scratched the back of her nose, then confessed, "But don't talk to Mum about it, okay? Remember, when Dad's sister came to visit us, Aunt Ira, well, in general, when a person goes to heaven, some relatives start dividing his things," she cautiously explained. Aunt Ira declared that the toys belonged to their parents, so they were hers. Although there were a lot of Mum's toys, and she and Dad had chosen the Christmas tree together, but Mum didn't fight with her. She didn't even know that Aunt Ira had taken everything from the attic. In the girl's voice trembled resentment and pain. "Brenda, but without a Christmas tree?" "Wrong. And where will Santa put our presents?" the boy asked with trembling voice. "Nowhere, Johnny. This year we'll do without presents," Brenda answered deadly. "Have I behaved badly?" Johnny was scared. "No, of course not. You're an excellent boy. Just not always do miracles happen with good people. They only happen in fairy tales, and you and I grew out of them, you know? And for you, this year, we decided to ask Santa for clothes. Your jacket is too small for you, as well as your winter trousers. You're growing up fast." "No!" The child stubbornly stuck out his lip. "I'm only 7 years old. I'm still a little boy. I want to write a letter. I want a Christmas tree. I want to decorate it like we used to. It was so much fun. Remember? Like we used to," Brenda burst out. "We used to dress it up with Daddy. Johnny, but Daddy's not coming back. He's in heaven." Travis felt a prick in his heart. He and Mum would have their first New Year's Eve without their father. However, their dad turned out to be a bad man. And what happened to Brenda's family? "Daddy looks down on us from the sky," the little boy frowned. "He'll be offended if we didn't put up the Christmas tree. He loved the holidays, and he always said I should believe in miracles. If you believe in them, they will happen, and if you don't believe, nothing good will happen." Brenda got to her feet, pacing back and forth. Travis froze. He had never seen her like this. The girl had always seemed eternally cheerful, kind, responsive, never nervous or worried. But now her face was unrecognizable. Her brown eyes brimmed with emotions, resentment, anger, pain. They all poured out suddenly, as if Brenda's fuses had blown. "Listen, Johnny, enough! Stop believing in fairy tales. Just don't expect the presents you want under the tree this year. We don't have the money for that. We've got enough problems as it is. Can't you see Grandma's sick? Mum's worried about her, and she's working too hard. Her boss is a complete fool. We're still in debt. I wanted to help, to get a part-time job. She won't even hear of it. She keeps saying that my job is to study and help with you." She finished the tirade and, hearing a stifled sob, shuddered. Her face softened and the girl knelt before her brother, taking his hands in hers. "Johnny, please forgive me. I didn't mean to upset you. It's just, well, I'm sorry, okay? We'll work something out, right?" She hugged the boy comfortingly. "Maybe I'll ask the guys and we can find a little Christmas tree, and we'll make the decorations ourselves. What do you think? It'll be even better." "Will there be presents underneath it?" the boy asked, still holding out hope for magic. Brenda gulped. She looked into the child's wet eyes. He, too, was red-haired and brown-eyed, like his sister. Brenda ruffled his hair. "Something will turn up. After all, you're such a good boy," she said, hiding the pain behind a smile. The boy brightened. His sister wiped the tears from his face with her palms. At that moment the door opened again, and 3 teachers entered the hall. Behind them the schoolchildren followed, dragging boxes with unknown contents. "Oh, the protagonist is already here," Helen exclaimed when she saw Brenda. "Well, we'd better wait for Santa Claus." "You know, Helen, I can't understand," muttered the math teacher, sitting down in the empty chair. "How did you persuade our Bill Neville to play Santa Claus? He can't stand it." "I just asked and he agreed," Helen shrugged. The math teacher clucked her tongue. "You just asked? I can't believe it. I've been asking him to fix the shelf in the classroom for 3 years, but he has no time, and he's never been in a play." "Don't listen to her, she's jealous," giggled the physics teacher.
that Bill is an enviable bachelor. There aren't many of them in our women's collective. You can see that he likes you." Helen was embarrassed. Travis was too. He liked the gym teacher, though he was too pushy, calling him all the time to competitions. But Travis didn't even know that Mr. Neville had a soft spot for his mum. No, too many secrets he had learned sitting in this den. Travis slipped out through the second door and then entered the main hall properly. His mother, seeing him, brightened. "Have you changed your mind? Please say yes. We don't have enough male characters."
"Indeed. Why would that be?" Travis snorted. "After all, everyone dreams of being Toto or Cowardly Lion, right?"
Just then the future Dorothy appeared next to Travis's mum. The girl smiled welcomingly. Travis tried to fix traces of former sadness in her face, but in vain. She skillfully concealed them. "Come on, Travis, you'll make a fine Tin Man," she said.
"Because I have no heart? Well, thank you for not making me the brainless scarecrow."
Travis grinned crookedly, feeling his defences cracking. "No," the girl laughed. "You've read the book, haven't you? The Tin Man, on the contrary, had the biggest and most sensitive heart. I always liked him best." And Travis gave in. He was completely won over. His mum was almost jumping with happiness. The role of Toto, who was also unoccupied and didn't have many lines, was given to Johnny. The boy was very proud of his new role. He did his best, barking especially amusingly and sonorously. The rehearsal went well. Then Travis helped his mum gather their things and said he would wait for her outside. He went to the changing room. There, before he could put on his jacket, he heard Brenda and her brother again. "Brenda, I think I lost my mittens." Something fell with a thud in the far corner. Brenda must have dropped her bag. "Honey, are you going to cry? You can't cry, it's freezing outside." Travis moved toward the exit with a last glance over his shoulder. Brenda, kneeling and not minding the dirty floor, stood before her brother. She pulled her white fluffy mittens over his little hands. "They're for girls," Johnny sighed gloomily. "Don't be silly. White is the right colour for everyone. Besides, the cold won't know whose fingers they are, a boy's or a girl's. Oh, come on, put them on." "What about you? It's very freezing." The boy was indignant. "I'm all right. I'm older." Brenda waved him away, pulling her hood over her head. Travis waited for Brenda and her brother at the school gate. In his pocket he clutched his gloves, feeling excited. As soon as Brenda reached them, he quickly approached, not giving himself a chance to change his mind. "Brenda," he called out to her. She turned around and smiled. "Are you still here? Are you waiting for your mum?" Travis nodded and took a pair of black gloves out of his pocket. "Here, it's cold today. I'm sorry I was in the changing room too," he said, averting his gaze. Brenda blinked in confusion. She didn't immediately see the gloves in the boy's hands, first noticing his battered knuckles. Travis looked cautiously in her direction, watching snowflakes fall on her shoulders and the hair that had escaped her hood. Brenda's cheeks flushed with a blush that had nothing to do with the cold. "Beautiful," said the Travis's heart once more. "Come on, take them," he smiled, suddenly calm rather than his usual nervous self. "What about you?" "My hands are warm," grinned Travis. "Brenda, I'll put them on you if you refuse." The girl laughed softly and put on the gloves with tenderness in her eyes. They were too big. Brenda playfully clenched and unclenched her fingers. "Thank you, they're warm." She looked into Travis's eyes. "I was right, telling you that Tin Man had a huge heart." Travis really wanted to ask what had happened in her family. More than that, though, he wanted to help her. He wished Brenda would always smile genuinely, not hide behind a mask. "Travis, there you are. Mr. Neville decided to give us a lift. Isn't it great?" The boy's mother came out of the gate, followed by the gym teacher. Travis glanced at the man, who was smiling broadly and genuinely. "Great," he drawled. "I need to gather more teachers around me, so I can become the favourite of my classmates faster. Maybe we should bring a math teacher." "Travis!" Helen shook her head. Brenda snorted with laughter. "Brenda, do you want a lift?" Mr. Neville offered. "No, we live close by, and I promised my brother I'd make a snowman. Now I can because I have gloves," said the girl cheerfully. "See you tomorrow, Travis." Travis slyly winked her goodbye, shoving his hands in his jacket pockets. The girl blushed again and waved with her gloved hand. In the car, the boy had an idea. He leaned forward between the passengers and the driver's seats. "Mum, we have to give away our Christmas tree, and if you haven't bought my Christmas present yet, I would rather accept the money. Is it okay? I have some saved, but it might not be enough." "What?" Helen gasped. "What kind of teenage rebellion is this? And why do you need money?" "Look, I don't know what happened at their family, but they have no Christmas tree, no decorations, and her brother is so sweet and small. He still believes in Santa Claus. He shouldn't lose his faith in miracles like that. I want to buy presents for them." The boy grew more passionate as he spoke, his thoughts tumbling out. Helen listened attentively, a mysterious smile on her face. "Travis, have you fallen in love?" she asked when the schoolboy finished his speech. "Mum, I just want to help her." Travis blushed deeply, sinking back into his seat. The gym instructor cleared his throat and joined the conversation. "Last year their father fell ill. He lost his battle with cancer quickly." Bill sighed, watching the road. "I don't know much, but I heard the relatives caused chaos at the funeral with their demands. Instead of remembering the deceased, they started fighting over property. Their aunt showed up, claiming their parents had always loved her more, that she deserved everything because of that. She took whatever wasn't nailed down. Zoe, their mother, was too devastated to fight back. She works at the market. I've seen her a few times. She's lost a lot of weight." After listening to the teacher, the boy looked at his mum expectantly. "Mum, that evil aunt even took their Christmas tree. By the way, what do we need such a huge tree for? We barely have room for it anyway. But it would make them so happy. Isn't that what holidays are about? Making people happy?" "What do you suggest? Just show up with a tree? That would be strange," Helen mused. "No," Travis smiled wider, sensing his mum's support. "I was thinking we could hire someone to play Santa Claus." "Why hire anyone?" Mr. Neville protested. "I've been told I make an excellent Santa Claus." Travis felt a surge of gratitude and even warmth toward Mr. Neville. "All right, let him look after my mum. He seems like a good man." "You know, I could be the snow maiden," Mum said excitedly. "And we'll make you, Travis, a reindeer," joked the gym teacher, glancing at the boy in the rear-view mirror. Travis clicked his tongue, deciding he'd think more about whether he wanted such a stepfather. Still, the mood in the car had brightened considerably. Bill Neville was even invited for tea, since he was now part of their holiday mission. From then on, Travis could hardly wait for the Christmas Eve. Mr. Neville found Zoe at the market and said about the planned surprise. He later said the woman couldn't hold back her tears when she heard their plan. School Christmas celebrations got a standing ovation, with Brenda shining especially bright. Before leaving school, Travis approached little Toto and, shaking his hand, asked, "What would you ask Santa Claus for?" The boy thought for a moment, then raised his innocent eyes at Travis. I wrote him a letter. We all wrote them in class. Only I didn't send it, and I didn't let Brenda check it for mistakes, or she'd get upset. Can you give it to me? I'll check it and send it, Travis offered. The high school student in his Tin Man costume inspired trust in the boy. He took the letter from his school notebook. Here. Travis tucked the paper in his pocket and patted the boy's head. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. I'll make sure your letter gets delivered. But it's our secret, okay? The little boy beamed and nodded. And so Christmas Eve came. While the world slept, a miracle visited Johnny's flat. It didn't come through the window or down the chimney, but through a carefully opened, quietly creaking door. Brenda! Squealed Johnny, jumping on his sister's bed. My God, Johnny, what time is it? What are you doing up so early? The girl startled awake. Brenda! The boy started bouncing on the mattress. It's Christmas today, and a miracle has happened. You said there would be no Christmas tree, but there is. A huge one. It's full of ornaments, balls, toy animals, candy, even cars. Are you sick or what? The girl mumbled sadly. They had a Christmas tree, but a poor one, just a few branches Brenda had brought inside and clustered together, decorated with homemade toys. Let's go! Get up! Come on, I'll show you! The child hooted excitedly, grabbing his sister's limp arm and pulling her from under the blanket. Where are you dragging me? Muttered the girl, her bare feet slapping on the cold floor. As she reached the living room, she was shocked. Her sleep-swollen eyes widened. There stood the Christmas tree, beautiful and colourful. There are presents here, Johnny announced. He ran to the tree and touched the toys carefully, as if afraid they might disappear, then stepped back to admire it again. I didn't open the presents. Mummy said to wait for you, the boy told her. Brenda, blinking, shifted her gaze to her mother and grandmother. They were both already dressed at this hour, dressed up even. Grandma had put on her best scarf, as if renewed with strength, and Mum had even applied lipstick. Miracles indeed. The women smiled as they watched the children. Mum, but how? From where? Brenda whispered, unable to believe her eyes. Zoe smiled slyly. How long had it been since she had smiled like that? After losing her husband, she had always been tired, and now it was as if her strength had returned to her, or perhaps a belief in miracles. Can we switch on the lights? Johnny asked, jumping up and down beside the Christmas tree. No, Mum smiled mysteriously. Only Santa Claus can do that. And then, as if obeying her voice, came a knock at the door. Not a ring, but a knock. Boom, boom, boom. Johnny, run, open up. Zoe clapped her hands. Who could that be? Brenda staggered back into the corridor in shock, then followed her brother. Johnny had already grabbed the doorknob and pulled it down, letting in the cold air. Well, hello, hello, Santa Claus said, leaning on his staff and dragging in a sack of presents. Do the boy Johnny and the girl Brenda live here? Brenda covered her mouth with her palms. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. She recognized the PE teacher immediately, though naive Johnny clearly saw him as a real wizard. Next to Mr. Neville stood the Snow Maiden, their lovely, sweet-looking music teacher. How pretty she was in her blue coat. And then Travis entered the flat. He was smiling, embarrassed but genuinely happy, wearing funny antlers on his head. Travis met his classmate's gaze and winked at her again. Brenda felt hundreds of butterflies flutter in her stomach. The festive morning at their house turned out magical. And what extraordinary presents Santa Claus delivered from his sack. "Ah, I got your letter, Johnny," said the man. "Snow Maiden, read us his wish list." The music teacher took out a piece of paper and read what Johnny wanted for Christmas. "Dear Santa, I love you very much and I am waiting for you. Please make my family happy. Bring Grandma a beautiful dressing gown because she has an old one. Perfume for Mum. She loves perfume. And for my sister Brenda, a beautiful princess dress. And you can give me nothing," the boy had written. While Helen read and Johnny's family fought back tears, Travis and Santa Claus were already distributing presents. In the bag were a dressing gown, perfume, and even a dress and cosmetics for Brenda. "Well, Johnny, for you, with such a kind heart, we chose presents ourselves," Santa Claus told the delighted boy, nodding toward the tree. "They're all yours." Johnny received a railway set with a cool train, a teddy bear dressed as a footballer, because Johnny dreamed of playing football, a new ball and new gloves. When it was time to bid farewell, Johnny hugged Santa Claus and Snow Maiden. Travis, as a reindeer, got a child's hug too. While Johnny was distracted by presents, Zoe quietly asked her guests, "Will you come to celebrate with us? We'll set the table. It's the least I can do to repay your kindness." "No repayment needed, but we'd love to spend the holiday together," smiled Helen. "I'll bring treats too." Bill nodded, giving the woman a tender look. All the guests left. Brenda, forgetting she was still in her pyjamas and barefoot, rushed after Travis to the stairwell. Her bare heels felt cold on the entryway floor. "Travis!" she called out. The boy turned back to her floor. "Why did you run out? You'll catch a cold," she scolded gently. Brenda stood on tiptoes, her heart pounding, and kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much." Travis touched the spot where the frog band-aid had once been and where now the girl's kiss burned. "And they say dreams don't come true." He smiled. "Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Brenda." They all spent New Year's Eve together. Families who might have faced a difficult and sad holiday instead cheered and rejoiced at the coming year. Now they all believed in miracles and that only joy awaited them. And then every year that followed was happy. Bill Neville and Helen Doe married. He became a wonderful stepfather to Travis. Soon the couple had a daughter, whom Travis adored. Zoe too found happiness, though it took time. Johnny played football and kept his belief in miracles. And Travis and Brenda carried their tender, fragile first love feeling through the years, protecting it all their lives and meeting every Christmas together. Now Brenda knew with certainty that magic was real. Except wizards aren't the heroes of fairy tales. They're the people who love you.
Rob had been experiencing a streak of bad luck lately. While in theory a black streak is often followed by a white one, in reality this hasn't been the case for him. Everything started to go downhill for Rob about a year ago, and unfortunately things have only continued to worsen since then. Initially, Rob had been working as a driver for 10 years at a motor transport company and was in good standing. However, a new boss came in and began making changes under the guise of optimization. The boss removed some of the routes, which left several drivers, including Rob, unemployed. Despite opportunities to find a new job, someone else always seemed to get there before Rob. As a result, Rob started working as a taxi driver. Although there were plenty of clients,
there were also many cab drivers, so he had to work all day or even at night to earn enough. Amber, Rob's wife, wasn't fond of this arrangement. Her husband was always on the road, and they only had a small amount of money. Although she grumbled and cried at times, she loved Rob nonetheless. Thankfully, everything was going well at the store, where Amber worked as a cashier. Of course, Rob realized that this was not a normal situation and wanted to spoil his wife with gifts, make repairs to their apartment, and have a child. But how could he have a baby when he was always in a state of suspense? Today there was money in his pocket, and tomorrow there was wind in his pocket? One day, Rob was standing at the station. There were few orders because after New Year's Eve, there were always fewer passengers. Suddenly, he saw an old lady walking towards him from the station, tiny as a bird, with an old down shawl on her head, wearing a shabby down jacket. "Dear, take me to the cemetery," she asked when Rob opened the window. Rob was surprised. "To the cemetery?" he asked. "Grandma, it's not the season to go there now, and it's getting dark, and it's not cheap. I won't take less than 100. "It's okay, you just bring me there," the elderly woman replied quietly. "I have money." Rob only shrugged his shoulders. Well, the boss is the boss. The elderly woman didn't seem crazy, so he agreed to take her. On the way, Rob received several calls from Amber. She asked him how much he had earned that day, because he had to make a credit payment for the washing machine the next day, and they had no money at home. Then she called to say that their house was out of groceries and that she would get her paycheck in a week. Sometimes she would call just to argue and break out into a family fight, perhaps out of hopelessness. Rob sluggishly excused himself, promised to bring groceries, find money for the payment, and just listen to his wife. He was so depressed, and it was awful. He was angry even at his passenger, who was sitting quietly in the back seat. The route was not close and it was already getting dark. Why did she have to go to the cemetery? He would obviously have to wait for her there, just burning gasoline. Rob stopped at the central entrance. $50, said Rob, and the elderly woman handed him 2 $100 bills. But it's too much, Rob muttered. Take it all, I see you're a good man and you need it more than I do, the elderly woman quietly replied. He then added more gently, All right, go and see whoever you want. I'll wait for you and take you back to town. You don't have to wait for me, the elderly woman said, shaking her head. I'll do it myself. Grandma, are you crazy? It's winter outside and the sun has already set. Are you going to spend the night here? Don't worry, they'll come for me, the passenger replied mumblingly, opening the car door. You go ahead, God bless you. Rob only raised his eyebrows in surprise. Who would come for her? And at this moment, a regular client called him, asking him to come urgently. Rob looked puzzled at the hunched figure moving away from the gate. What did he care about the old woman? Moreover, someone would come for her, as she said. Rob stuffed bills into the inside pocket of his jacket and drove away from the cemetery. For the next hour he drove his regular client around on business, and then there was another good trip. Rob's mood was visibly improving. He was going to make a lot of money today. When he was finally free, he took out the money to count it, and then he was struck by an electric shock. The bills from the old lady seemed strange to him. How did he not notice it at first? Apparently he was on edge. That's why he was distracted. Rob took a closer look and swore in fury. The old woman had deceived him. It was not real banknotes, but souvenir joke ones. The old hag. She played a trick on him, and he was worried about her and how she'd be in the cemetery on a frosty winter evening. What a fool he was. But no, he wouldn't let it go. Rob decided to go to the cemetery. Maybe the old woman was still there, though the chances were slim. But Rob was driven by rage. He wanted to find the old woman and shake her by the scruff of the neck for her bad jokes. He was at the cemetery when it got dark, His emotions had subsided a little, and Rob only shook his head. Why had he come here? The woman had obviously already left, just as she had said. Rob was about to drive back, and then, not far behind the fence, in the light of the moon near the cross, he noticed some movement. Goosebumps involuntarily ran down his back, but most fantastic assumptions suddenly appeared in his head, and he remembered his childhood fears. What if this elderly woman was a ghost, a dead woman? After all, he had heard so many stories in his life when dead people came into contact with living people and then returned to their graveyard. Rob shook his head, as if chasing away all his fears. What did he think up? Was he, a grown man, afraid of some scary stories? Of course not. She probably just didn't know what real money looked like and got confused. Or even worse, she was crazy and had just come to sit on the graves of her relatives, and if she froze, he would unwittingly be responsible for her death because he had brought her. These arguments seemed convincing to Rob. He got out of the car and headed resolutely towards the cemetery. It was night. Silence and murky moonlight glided along the only cleared path. Rob walked, gazing into the darkness, to the place where he had seen some shadow 5 minutes ago. The man stopped in indecision. Footprints were separated from the path, buried in a deep snowdrift. Apparently, the elderly woman had passed through here. But where is she? Damn it! Rob cursed quietly. Where did she go? If I find her, I don't know what I'll do with her because of all my worries. Suddenly, the cloud that covered the edge of the moon sailed farther across the dark sky, and the cemetery was flooded with yellow light. And then Rob saw the elderly woman. She was sitting 50 meters away, covered with snow, pressed against some monument. "Hey, Mum!" Rob shouted at her. "Are you alive there?" Hearing a human voice, the elderly woman shuddered and turned around. Squinting blindly, she tried to see who was calling her, but the frost was already doing its work, and therefore her lips did not obey. Her hands and feet froze. The old woman was freezing. "Have you completely frozen to death out there?" Rob got angry and climbed into the snowdrift. The snow was more than knee-deep. Rob reached the old woman and touched her shoulder. The old woman looked at him and tried to say something, but her lips only moved soundlessly. Rob felt no anger towards the old woman for her deception. He even felt sorry for the poor woman. What could have happened to her that she decided to freeze in the cemetery? Rob examined the inscription on the monument closely. It was the burial site of a woman about 40 years old, perhaps a relative of hers, or even her daughter, Rob thought. "I'm sorry, but you're not going to the grave for nothing. You still owe me," Rob said, before picking her up and dragging her across the snowdrift to the path. The elderly woman didn't speak, but shook, and tears streamed down her face. In the car, Rob poured some hot tea from a thermos and gave her a drink himself. After about 5 minutes, the woman felt a little better. "Why did you come here?" she whispered. "I've told you not to." "Are you kidding?" Rob grinned. "First of all, I couldn't get it out of my head that I left an old woman in the cold at the cemetery. And secondly, you deceived me." "Yes, I'm sorry," she replied quietly. "No one was going to come for me, and I decided to stay here next to my daughter." "You mean to freeze?" Rob clarified sharply. The elderly woman lowered her eyes and nodded. "What happened in your life that made you decide to do something like that?" Rob whistled in surprise. "But no, by deceit, I meant something else. You deceived me in another way. You gave me fake money." "What fake money?" gasped the elderly lady. "It can't be. The director himself gave it to me. You must have gotten something wrong. I gave you the money out of the goodness of my heart, even more than you asked." "Really? Out of the goodness of your heart? Was I wrong?" Rob got angry. "That's it. Enough. Let's go to the police. Let them deal with you there." "No, not the police," sobbed the old woman.
They'll take me back to the nursing home again, and I can't stay there. It's better to leave me here. I want to die next to my daughter. I'm ready for that, and I want that. As for the money, I'm sorry if I cheated. It's not out of malice. Here, take this. It's not expensive, but it's still worth something."
She pulled out of her pocket a silver chain with an angel-shaped pendant.
"This belonged to my daughter Judith," the woman said, wiping away her tears. "I gave it to her when she was in school. I found it after her death, and it's been with me ever since, but now I don't need it."
She held out the chain, her hand trembling, tears streaming down her face.
Rob felt a pang in his chest. The elderly woman didn't seem like a liar. "Put the chain back in your pocket," he said. "Let it be with you, and forget about the money. I believe you didn't mean to deceive me. Probably you yourself have been a victim of deceit. Tell me about yourself. What's your name?" "My name is Margaret Collins," the woman answered calmly, sighed, clasped the chain in her dry palm, pressing it to her chest. "After my daughter and son-in-law died, I've been living in a nursing home, but it was unbearable there, so I decided to take matters into my own hands."
"Why is it unbearable in the nursing home?" Rob asked, looking thoughtfully at Mrs. Collins. Sadly shaking her head, she began to recount her story. Mrs. Collins had lived in the village her entire life. Her husband died when she was young, and she raised her daughter Judith alone. Judith was intelligent and beautiful, and graduated from the college in the city, where she met her future husband. They eventually got married, and Mrs. Collins prayed every day that happiness would not leave her daughter's house. Judith and Mark enjoyed a good life together, but one disappointment was that they were unable to have children. However, they eventually grew accustomed to the idea that they lived only for each other, and continued to love each other no matter what. As Mrs. Collins' health began to deteriorate, her daughter brought her to live with her in the city. Mrs. Collins lived with her daughter and son-in-law for 2 years, and everything was normal. However, a terrible accident occurred. Judith and Mark went on vacation, and on a serpentine road, the bus they were travelling in went down into a ravine. Many people died, including Judith and Mark. Mrs. Collins buried them herself, which was a difficult and painful experience, but she managed to hold herself together and take care of everything that needed to be done. After the funeral, Mrs. Collins was left with no strength. When a young girl appeared in the apartment claiming to be Mark's daughter and having all the rights to the apartment, Mrs. Collins didn't argue. There was no point in arguing, as the girl really resembled her late son-in-law. It turned out that Mark had a will signed by him, and it indicated that things were not smooth between him and Mrs. Collins's daughter, and it was unclear whether Judith knew about his illegitimate daughter. Now, no one can say. Mrs. Collins decided to go to the nursing home herself, and everything worked out well for her. She called the social office, inquired about a place, and was told that there was just one vacancy. The nursing home was ordinary, but Mrs. Collins did not need luxurious apartments. She was a country woman, accustomed to living simple. Mrs. Collins would have gone to the village, but she had sold her house, and her daughter and son-in-law did not have enough money for a new car. That was why her only option was to go to the nursing house. However, soon Mrs. Collins realized that the nursing home was called a house of mercy only on paper. In reality, it was like a very ordinary prison. The residents were let out for walks strictly on schedule, fed poorly, and given only the cheapest medicines. Additionally, 75% of their pensions were taken to cover living costs. The elderly people did not ask where the money went, as they were afraid of the director, who acted like a dictator. Rumours circulated that the director used to be a chief in the prison system and ran the nursing home like a prison. Mrs. Collins found it hard to adapt to life in the nursing home,
and she regretted agreeing to go there. She wanted to transfer to another place, but it was not possible. When the director, Mr. Benneth, found out about her desire to transfer, he looked at her in a way that made the elderly woman sit down in fear. And then the director suddenly began to wonder how much money the tenants had saved from the 25% of their pension they had given him. The director expressed that it would be better to exchange everything for large bills. Since the elderly residents had nowhere to spend smaller denominations, and larger bills were safer. Consequently, they gave Mrs. Collins those fake bills, and she herself was unaware that something was amiss with the paper and blindly accepted it. And then one day Mrs. Collins felt incredibly sad and questioned why she even continued to live. She had no relatives in the world and nowhere to spend her money. The final straw was the death of her friend, with whom they shared the room. The neighbour had a hypertensive crisis, yet instead of calling an ambulance or administering medicine, the nurse simply brought her a wet towel to put on her forehead. The neighbour died the next morning. This experience led Mrs. Collins to contemplate her own life and to question why she was waiting for death in a cage. On the morning of the nursing home inspection, the elderly residents were intimidated and warned not to complain. They were all washed and redressed and allowed to watch TV in the hall. The inspectors saw clean and content elderly residents watching movies. The elderly people saw how warmly Mr. Benneth greeted the inspectors, and so they all stayed quiet and with feeling helpless. Mrs. Collins sat in the hall, staring at the front door, wishing she could escape. Where to? She didn't know. However, it was winter outside, and she didn't have any warm clothes. At that moment, a worker came into the nursing home. She took off her jacket and shawl at the entrance and went to the kitchen with the orderlies. The elderly people were left unattended for a while. Mrs. Collins seized the opportunity, grabbed the woman's clothes and ran outside. After putting on the down jacket and shawl, she ran to the nearby bus stop. The other old men watched through the window as if blessing her. At least one of them would escape. By chance, a shuttle bus pulled up right away. Mrs. Collins didn't think about where to go as long as it was far away. She had money in the secret pocket of her sweater. She paid the fare and left for the train station. Mrs. Collins didn't know whether they were looking for her or not. They probably hushed it up at once so that there would be no embarrassment in front of the inspectors. Mrs. Collins wandered around the station thinking, yes, her daughter was calling her. She got into a cab. At the cemetery, she quickly found her daughter's grave, hugged the gravestone, and sat waiting for her end. "I'm sorry, dear," Mrs. Collins said to Rob at the end of her story. "I gave you the money out of the goodness of my heart, and I didn't know that they were fake." "I've already understood," Rob replied sullenly, thinking about what he had heard. What should he do now? Of course he should go to the police, but until they sort it out, they'll send the elderly woman back to the nursing home. What if they punish her for running away? "All right, darling, forgive me if you can," Mrs. Collins said quietly. "I'll go now." "Where to?" Rob was surprised. "Back to my daughter." "Oh, don't be silly," Rob exclaimed and locked the doors. "Do you want to freeze?" "Okay, but then I'll blame myself for the death of a woman for the rest of my life. That's not fair to me." "Okay, it's decided. You're coming with me." "Where to?" Mrs. Collins mumbled in fear. "To my house. You'll rest and come to your senses, and in the morning we'll decide where to complain." This decision came spontaneously, and it was the right one. Let Mrs. Collins spend the night at his place, and in the morning we'd have to call the police. But he won't let her go anywhere until she's placed in a proper nursing home. "Son, how will your wife react to this?" The elderly woman was confused when she heard Rob's suggestion. "I don't think she needs a stranger's grandmother in the house." "She'll react normally." "She'll react normally." Rob waved her away. "She sometimes likes to quarrel, of course, but she gets over it quickly. Amber will understand." It should be said that Amber saw her husband with Mrs. Collins. She was speechless, but Rob took her to the kitchen and explained the situation. "So you want her to live with us?" Amber was indignant. "Just for a little while, until the police sort it out." "Well, I felt sorry for the old woman." Amber grinned and thought, "Well, let her spend the night and then we'll see." Mrs. Collins was standing in the hallway, realizing that she was not welcome here either. Meanwhile, Amber looked out of the kitchen. "Take off your outer clothes. Let's drink tea," she called to the elderly woman. Mrs. Collins hesitantly took off her jacket and shawl, and then Amber gasped. "Mrs. Collins, is that you? Don't you recognize me? It's Amber, Amber Gibson." "Are you Helen and Ben's daughter from our village?" "Well, yes," Amber nodded, and then it was Rob's turn to be speechless and not understand anything, while the women embraced. It turned out that Mrs. Collins was from the same village as his wife. The elderly woman lived next door to Amber's parents. So now the ice has finally melted in communication. Amber warmly accepted Mrs. Collins, fed her, gave her a drink, helped her bathe, and then put the elderly woman to bed in the living room. And then she called her parents in the village. When they found out what their poor neighbour had been through, they immediately asked Rob to take her to them. Even though Mrs. Collins's house had long had other owners, there were several strong empty houses in the village. The whole village would help her settle down by summer. Meanwhile, she would stay with them. No nursing homes. In the morning, Amber told the elderly woman about her parents' offer. Mrs. Collins thought about it and agreed. Rob took her to the village, but before they went to the police, where Mrs. Collins told them in detail about what was going on in the nursing home. Sometime later, a large-scale prosecutor's audit of the nursing home began. Many violations and crimes were revealed. The investigation also managed to prove that the director was involved in cheating old people. He was jailed for a decent term, and in general, the staff of the nursing home was changed. Now the elderly people lived decently there. There is no trace of their past fears. But Mrs. Collins won't go back there anyway. She's fine in her native village. And Rob's black streak was finally over. One day, he gave a ride to a man who turned out to be a big shot. Mr. Garrison liked Rob's driving and behaviour on the road, and he offered him a job as a personal driver. And the salary was 3 times more than he earned at taxi. Of course, Rob accepted that offer. Everything in his life has improved, and he and Amber are living peacefully. They are waiting for a baby. Yes, indeed, the black streak in life passes. The main thing is not to be angry at this time, at the whole world, not to harden your heart, and then fate will definitely smile on you.
Voila! Exclaimed Annie, winking at the camera lens. With this makeup, you can go both to a social gala or to the funeral of your ex. Annie laughed at her own black joke, then sent an air kiss to the camera and turned it off. After that, she sighed heavily, as if carrying the entire vault of heaven on her thin shoulders, like the mythological Atlas. Although, probably, even the Titan complained less about his life than Annie at this moment. Annie picked up her phone and opened her latest video, scrolling through the comments. With each word, sentence or emoji she read or saw, her mood dropped and her eyebrows drew together at the bridge of her nose. "What ungrateful people!" she raged, blocking the smartphone and throwing it on the table. She leaned back in the pink chair and stared at the neon-lit ceiling. Annie Cargill, known on the World Wide Web as Annie OK, was a top beauty blogger.
She had everything she had never dreamed of before: money, fame, popularity, and several 100,000 subscribers. Advertising offers poured in on her like a cornucopia, which helped her pay for such a beautiful life. Her apartment was located in one of the elite complexes. Annie bought up brands and indulged in some of the sins like pride. She had also learned to lie, something she had never done before. Annie grew up in an orphanage at the age of 13 after losing her only guardian, her grandmother. Of course, no one was rushing to take a grown girl into the family, so she stayed under the care of the state until she came of age. After graduation, Annie went to study PR at college and met Nick. Soon he became her best friend and then her agent. The thing was that Annie discovered her talent for makeup when she was still in the orphanage. There she often painted the girls with dried mascara and a meagre set of shadows that smelled like latex gloves. But the girls were enamoured with their young makeup artist and couldn't tear themselves away from the mirror for long periods of time. During their third year of study at college, the teacher gave the students a course task. "I suggest you divide into groups of 2 or 3 people," said the teacher. "You should create an account on social media, and then you should start to publicize content and promote it." The students split into 2 camps. Some whined that they didn't want to join the ranks of bloggers, while others got excited. "Whoever collects the most subscribers by the end of the semester, I'll admit your exam automatically," the teacher added, providing a solid incentive. Then everyone got excited. Of course, Annie and Nick teamed up. They were united in their desire to pass the exam easily. "What are we going to blog about?" asked Annie when they got into the dormitory. "What are people interested in nowadays?" Nick glanced at how beautifully the tip of Annie's nose glistened, and on her cheekbones stars shimmered. Today she was wearing funny makeup again and looked like a fairy. Nick suddenly thought that most likely his friend had spent the entire scholarship on cosmetics and he should feed her. "What about you?" he suggested suddenly. Annie blinked and wrinkled her nose. "Can't you think of a more boring topic? My life consists of you and studying. I live in a dorm with a mean roommate. One of them steals my cookies, by the way." Nick snorted with laughter. "No, I'm serious, Annie. You asked what people were interested in. There are many teenagers on the internet. You could show off your makeup, tell about your past, share your thoughts. You are much more interesting than many such bloggers." At the time, Annie only laughed. However, time was passing and there were no new ideas. Although the thought of becoming a blogger both frightened and beckoned to the girl, finally she said yes. The nickname Annie OK was picked by Nick. It was their private joke. When they met and Nick recognized her name, he sang lines from Michael Jackson's hit song, seeing how she was worried before the seminar. "Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?" Gritting her teeth, Annie mumbled back, "Annie is okay." Since then, he often called his friend Annie OK, which symbolically became the beginning of her new career in the world of blogging. Nick and Annie leveraged Annie's best traits and difficult past. Annie was not ashamed of it and spoke frankly. Therefore, seeing her sincerity, people stayed on the girl's page. Some were curious, someone felt sorry for her, and others admired her humour, beauty, and ability to make up. Nick helped Annie with everything from setting up lights and cameras to editing scripts and communicating with other bloggers to promote her. The result of their labour was an A on the exam, but they didn't stop there. That's when it all began. Annie rose to the top of fame. By the end of college, she had become a popular influencer and not the last person in the beauty world. Now, she didn't even buy cosmetics. They were sent free of charge by well-known brands, but only if she put on makeup with their product. As a result, Annie changed. She tasted the forbidden fruit, but not from the tree of knowledge, but from the tree of fame. She revelled in it and eventually crossed the line.
Annie was recently involved in a scandal or two. Therefore, instead of admiring Annie's new pictures and videos, people discussed in the comments what a wretch she had become. I subscribed to Annie a long time ago when she joked a lot and talked about life in the orphanage. I learned makeup from her lessons. However, now I don't trust her. Unsubscribing, someone wrote in the comments. How fame changes people. Annie OK used to be the sweetest blogger, and now she's just like everyone else, another subscriber wrote. And such comments appeared with each passing day. Worse still, sponsors began to back out. Not all of them, of course. Some liked the black PR as well, but most of them withdrew their offers, not wanting to smear their reputation. The thing was that Annie, in a purse for big money, agreed to advertise a bad product, although Nick tried to talk her out of it. As a result, the cosmetics, which she carefully promoted, caused skin and health problems for her subscribers. One even ended up in hospital with chemical burns. To make matters worse, Annie's boyfriend Mark, also a blogger and athlete, publicly shamed her. He posted a video where she spoke badly about the subscribers who went to the hospital. Am I to blame for this? If they, like a herd of blind and stupid sheep, are ready to spend money on everything that bloggers advise, then I advise them to buy books and train their brains instead. And I didn't force them to buy those cosmetics. Annie said all this in her heart, on her emotions, because it was her first public scandal. And of course, she did not know that Mark filmed her on the phone and broadcast it. So the guy decided to declare their breakup and, as they say, catch the hype. Suddenly the phone rang. Annie saw Nick's name and pouted. Only do not read me morals again, please. She threw instead of, hello, yes, I admit you were right. Mark used me for the sake of hype, and it was a mistake to advertise cosmetics. Are you happy now? Nick snorted, and then to Annie's surprise, calmly asked, Annie, are you okay? Annie blinked and then sobbed, Annie is not okay at all. The girl was relieved by this short dialogue. It was as if she could briefly go back to a past where she wasn't such an evil idiot. Annie, I figured out how to whitewash your reputation, she informed her friend and agent. Annie sniffed and perked her ears. I'm all ears. There is an annual charity event at the Children's Hospital, and you have been invited to attend as an animator. Hospital? The blogger gasped. But there are sick people there. Well, that's the point of the existence of the hospitals, replied Nick sarcastically. Gather people in wards and then treating them. No, you don't get it, Annie said, wrinkling her nose in distaste as she looked at her manicure. I don't want to get any illness or rashes. How am I supposed to put on makeup afterward? And it's going to be difficult for me to act on camera, you know. When I see sick kids, it makes me squeamish. I've had it since the orphanage. I hate hospitals. I was sent there a couple of times. The nurses treated me and the other kids from the orphanage badly, like we shouldn't get used to the good life. And, by the way, some of the children come there with shingles. No, I can't go back there. Are you done? Nick yawned into the phone. Anyway, the event is this Sunday in the morning. So, no clubs on Saturday. You'll be given a costume, and luckily, you've already learned how to smile falsely. Annie heard the irritation in Nick's voice that wasn't there before. Nick, what is wrong with you? She gasped. Are you asking me? Annie, it's me who should have this question to you. What's wrong? What's wrong with you, Annie? You know, I was on your side for a long time, but you really became different. Entirely different person. The guy exhaled nervously. Anyway, I'll be waiting for you at the hospital. Bye. Then he hung up the phone, and Annie stared blankly at the wall in front of her, thinking about her unpleasant situation. A couple of days later on Sunday morning, Annie stood in the room where the medical staff usually rested and looked at her reflection with horror. "It's a complete nightmare," she grumbled, looking at the fairy costume. The outfit included a lettuce tutu skirt, a kind of shiny leotard taken from some gymnast, wings that dangled behind her back, and a magic wand with a star on the end. Annie thought sarcastically that the costume was 99% synthetic and another 1% shame. "Okay, Annie, okay. Pull yourself together," the blogger said, taking a deep breath and then smiling radiantly. Her lips trembled and the smile almost came off like a mask when she remembered Nick's words. "You've learned to smile falsely." The combative attitude nearly left Annie, but she picked herself and her wand up and walked out into the hospital corridor. The children were gathered in the playroom. Animators were already walking among them, a pirate, a panda, and a princess. The fairy slipped into the crowd and began posing for the cameras. She smiled at the children, rubbed their hair, and even hugged some of them, feeling a strange feeling. Annie didn't like it here. She felt bad. It was like she was looking into her past. Suddenly, among the clamouring, enthusiastic patients of the children's hospital, she noticed one girl with short hair and wearing old clothes. She sat on the sidelines, watching the festivities like a spectator, not wanting to participate. During the whole time, the girl never smiled or said a word. Annie squinted at the child, feeling vaguely uneasy, as the little girl looked at the fairy with a pensive gaze. "This is a silent one, Molly. She doesn't talk," said the nurse, who was standing next to the blogger. "Really?" Annie blinked. "Why? From birth?" The nurse shrugged her shoulders. "I don't think so. She is from an orphanage. They're all like that there, with peculiarities," she remarked, then blushed thickly and looked at the blogger. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. In general, I am your subscriber, and I think that Mark did wrong." Annie fictitiously smiled and thanked the girl for her support. Meanwhile, Mark had already managed to appear in her life again. When Annie posted a photo of herself in the fairy costume with a note that she was going to please the children, he sent her a few hearts and a nasty message. "Maybe later you could borrow a costume from the nurse and come to please me." Reading this message, Annie blocked him immediately. She couldn't understand where her ex got the nerve. "It seems that only Nick is left among decent men," the girl thought to herself. Her faithful friend was also in the hospital. He didn't wear a costume, but he happily entertained the children. Annie even admired him when he was playing with the kids. He caught her glance and beckoned to her. The fairy, having adjusted her skirt, made her way towards the crowd of young patients. "And now, our beautiful fairy, Tinkerbell, will listen to your wishes. Who knows, maybe one of them will come true," said Nick, looking slyly at his little friend. And Annie suddenly realized that he was no longer angry. Nick rarely got angry with her. They didn't even argue. The children surrounded Annie and began shouting their wishes. "I want a doll with long hair," shouted a girl. "And I want a new smartphone," declared a boy. "I want a dog. No, maybe a cat." "But a dog, actually." The little boy couldn't make up his mind. The fairy patiently nodded and waved her magic wand, assuring them that she would try to fulfill their wishes. But for the magic to happen, you must behave well, and also be brave and strong. Drink your medicine and obey the doctors, Annie said. Also, your wish must come from the heart and be cherished, you know? Then suddenly, someone pulled her skirt. Annie turned around and saw the same girl named Molly, who had been sitting lonely in the corner. Annie remembered that Molly didn't speak and felt uncomfortable. The girl pointed with her hand for Annie to lean closer. Annie hesitated, then carefully squatted down to the girl's level. To her amazement,
The little girl took a breath and spoke.
"Dear, beautiful fairy,"
the girl began politely and leisurely,
"could you fulfill my most cherished wish?"
Unable to speak, Annie nodded. The girl's face lit up with a smile, transforming her previously frowning expression.
"More than anything, I want to see my brother again. He promised to come back to me when winter came, but he never came."
Annie swallowed nervously as she looked at the little girl, who froze in anticipation, folding her arms in a dignified manner. Meanwhile, the girl nodded at the magic wand.
"Will you wave it to make it happen?"
Annie, coming out of her daze, waved her wand, her hand and heart trembling. The little girl's wish was not like other children's requests for toys or pets, but for a brother. Annie played with the children for a while longer, but Molly remained on her mind. She didn't know why, maybe because of her past, or the little girl's huge and sincere eyes that looked at her with hope. Annie unexpectedly found herself wanting to fulfill that hope. The next day on Monday she went to the orphanage. On the way she expressed her thoughts to Nick. They can't separate siblings, it's not legal. Maybe she just considered someone her brother, suggested Nick, sitting behind the wheel. Annie, overcome with excitement, began to gnaw on her thumbnail. Nick glanced at her and grinned. Old habits die hard. The girl blushed, embarrassed, and hid her hand in her pocket. It's just nerves. The director of the orphanage waved her hands and said, Molly was recently transferred to us due to health problems. She lived in another town, and there was no good hospital there. I can find out which orphanage she had been living in, but you know, it's private information. Annie and Nick looked at each other and understood. Nick took out his wallet and asked, And how much is this information worth? The principal's eyes lit up, and soon Annie had a new address. The orphanage was indeed in another town, but that didn't stop Annie. She went there, but was not welcomed as cordially as at the first one. I don't remember any Molly, said the obese and insolent principal, adjusting her glasses, and Annie thought she would leave empty-handed. However, she was recognized by one of the teachers, who secretly told Annie the whole truth. I remember Molly and her brother. I had just started working here then, which is why I remembered them so well and became attached to them, she shared with Annie. Molly and Paul Bogolyubov were sent to the orphanage when they were taken away from their alcoholic mother and her boyfriend. Molly didn't talk to anyone except her brother. Why? Asked Annie with growing tenderness for this little girl every second. She didn't trust adults and didn't want to communicate with anyone, answered the teacher. The psychologist who talked to them said that her mother always scolded the girl, and if she cried, she would yell at her to shut up and beat her, so the girl withdrew into herself. Only her brother defended her. But how come they were separated, especially if the little girl was so attached to her brother? Exclaimed Annie. The teacher looked over her shoulder, making sure no one was around. Despite the fact that it was forbidden to separate the children, Paul was quickly placed in a family. He was a very handsome boy, smart and an athlete. Such children are dreamed of. Molly was often sick and they didn't want to take her. Who needs a mute and sickly child? She was younger than Paul, and her mother, when she was carrying the girl, drank and even took something forbidden. Paul didn't want to go to a new family. He was stubborn, angry, and even hit the gym teacher. But he was threatened. They said he had to go. They explained that then Molly could also be taken away to the family, and soon. But the two children would not be taken away. They told him many bad things. In the end, he gave up. He was sent to a family abroad, somewhere in Europe. The teacher pressed her lips together unhappily. I'm sure that the principal sold our Paul like a thoroughbred horse, she grumbled, shaking her head. I haven't heard from him since. Thank you. Annie thanked the woman, and then on impulse, she hugged her. The teacher shuddered and then even wept, saying, Believe me, I also wish them well, but I am just a little person. Annie returned, filled with determination to fulfill the girl's wishes, and she did what she knew how to do. She made a splash on the internet. Blogger Annie OK wrote posts searching for information. Her subscribers split into two camps. Some argued, she does it for hype. Others defended the girl. Even if so, she is doing a good deed. What's the difference? Annie stopped reading the comments, unable to sleep or eat until she found the little girl's brother. And then one day, Nick came to her and said, frightened, "Annie, you are pale with black eyes. You shouldn't treat yourself that way." He handed his friend a glass of coffee and a croissant from her favourite coffee shop. "I can't help it, Nick." Annie looked anxiously out the window. "It's the end of fall. Soon the snow will fall. Molly will be waiting again, because I gave her hope again. Well, not me, but the fairy. Anyway, you know what I mean." Annie swallowed nervously and put the food away. She turned away from Nick, ashamedly hiding the tears glistening in her eyes. "You know, I never told you because I wanted to seem strong, but I also always hoped that someone would come for me. I knew it was impossible, but that's why I didn't want to go to the hospital, where I could encounter orphans. Everything inside of me shrinks when I see such abandoned children." Nick leaned over to the girl and hugged her. She snuggled into his shoulder and rubbed her cheek against his prickly wool sweater. Nick always wore such sweaters. "Why do you wear these sweaters?" she whispered, swallowing back tears. "I have to tell you about the existence of soft cashmere." Nick laughed softly and his chest vibrated pleasantly. First I'll start with a sweater made of cashmere, and then I'll end up with not strong coffee, but decaf coffee with almond milk. No way." Annie snorted with laughter and raised her gaze to Nick. Their eyes met, and her heart did a somersault. He had always been incredibly handsome, and that had been Annie's first thought when she had seen Nick in her freshman year. She had even fallen in love with him, but she preferred to remain friends. After all, it was much easier to lose a lover than a friend. Now, however, something had cracked, fractured and changed. The air felt heavier, and the scent of fresh coffee mingled with the guy's perfume with woody notes. Annie's breath caught when Nick touched her lips with his gaze and then looked into her eyes again. His brown eyes darkened. "Annie, I want to say, a long time ago, in general," he began huskily, and at that moment Annie's phone rang. She abruptly pulled away from her friend and grabbed her smartphone. "Hi," she said nervously, then jumped up. "What? Really? No way. Yes, of course it is. Yes." When she hung up the phone, tears were streaming down her cheeks. "Nick, I found him," she whispered, and then she threw herself into the arms of her best friend. "He lives in Germany, and he was looking for his sister, but when she was transferred to our city, the string broke. He was so nervous and seemed happy. I can't believe it. It worked." Nick only sighed, holding Annie close to him and thinking about the fact that his confession had failed again. However, he had been waiting for this moment for many years and could wait a little longer. "Molly, you have visitors," the teacher called the little girl. She was leafing through a book lying on the floor. The girl nodded, stood up, fixed her skirt and followed the woman. She was often taken to see someone, doctors, psychologists, potential parents. She had gotten used to it, like brushing her teeth or braiding her hair. The girl entered the office and looked up, freezing in place. There stood the fairy from the hospital, with her brother by her side. "Molly," whispered Paul, taking a step forward. "Molly, I'm sorry, I've been looking for you. I swear, Molly didn't let him finish. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing. Annie, witnessing the scene, also burst into tears. Nick elbowed her in the side. "Miss Blogger, why aren't you filming the finale of this story? The likes would have been in the millions," he kidded his friend. "You know, I forgot my phone at home when I rushed to the airport to pick up Paul," admitted Annie, wiping her tears. "And I don't care about that. I want to live this moment entirely. I don't want to share it with anyone." "Then I'm leaving?" Nick snorted offensively. Annie laughed and took his hand. I don't want to share this moment with anyone but the closest person to me, Annie said, hiding her gaze under her wet lashes. Nick intertwined their fingers. Annie looked at the brother and sister again, knowing that they had found each other and wouldn't lose each other now. Nick was of age and was going to take custody of his sister. At that moment, Annie remembered what real, sincere happiness was, and she was no longer going to trade it for the false glitter of the virtual world. She turned to the window. The first snow started falling. The rainy day was coming to an end, and Erica, a young female cab driver, was driving to her last order. She was already tired, her back ached, and her eyes hurt from the constant strain. But Erica was not discouraged, because her earnings for the day were decent. However, she still felt nervous, as she had dealt with a variety of passengers throughout the day, including 3 late passengers to the train station, drunken men from the bar who sang songs in the cab, mothers with small children, and teenagers in love. Now, Erica was on her way to pick up an elderly woman to take her to the specified address. When the woman arrived at the place, she saw an old, shabby house in front of her. Although it was once a beautiful building, the paint had peeled off, and the shutters on the windows were skewed and rusted. The area around the house was also overgrown with weeds and wild grapes, indicating that no one had taken care of it for a long time. As time passed, no one came out of the house. Erica began to worry, as no one would pay for a false call, and a lot of gasoline was spent to get to the outskirts of the city. She honked a couple of times and began to drum nervously on the steering wheel with her fingers. Finally, the door creaked open, and an old woman came out on the threshold. She was gaunt and wrinkled, and looked no less than 80 years old. She was dressed poorly, with an old, shabby coat, out of season, and a thin shawl. The elderly woman dragged behind her a rather bulky suitcase. Erica immediately jumped out of the cabin and helped the woman load the suitcase into the trunk. "I'm so embarrassed in front of you," the elderly woman apologized. "Please forgive me for making you wait. I was working, so I didn't keep track of the time." Erica smiled encouragingly and said, "It's nothing, don't worry. Everything is all right. Sit down, buckle up and let's go. So now I'll lay out the route on the navigator, on the bypass. Perhaps we'll skip all the traffic jams, so it will be faster." Suddenly, the old lady asked, "Sweetheart, can I ask you to go through the city, through the centre? I've been a recluse for many years. My health doesn't allow me to go far from home, and I'd like to see what our city has become. I'll pay extra if you need it. By the way, my name is Mrs. Mans, and yours?" "I'm Erica," the girl replied. "Nice to meet you. No problem. As you say, I'll take you through the centre at a leisurely pace. That's not difficult for me." So they started on their way. Mrs. Mans admired the beauty outside and reminisced about the past. "Oh, look at the modern buildings," she exclaimed. "There used to be a dress shop here, I remember, and now they have built a restaurant. What is this huge miracle, flashing lights like a Christmas tree? How many floors are there? I can't even count." "This is a new shopping centre where you can buy anything you want. There is a movie theatre, and there is a cafe, and there are a lot of children's attractions," Erica informed her. The elderly woman continued to recall, "When we were young, my husband and I liked to take evening walks along the streets, through this park. Young people always gathered near the main square and made dates with each other. There was also a summer dance floor there. Ah, those were the days. I worked in the court as a secretary, and Bill was a teacher. He taught math at school. My husband's hands were golden. He built our house himself, and we did everything together. We didn't have children for a long time. God didn't give them to us, and then Cindy was born. How happy we were. Words can't describe. I never imagined that I would be alone in my old age." The elderly lady sighed, and Erica cautiously clarified, "So, what about your daughter? Where is she now?" Mrs. Mans wiped away a tear and said, "Oh, it's a long story, Erica. She had an unhappy love affair and disappeared. She renounced us and quarrelled with her father. We never saw each other again." "Oh, my goodness, look, what a beautiful church." Saying this, the elderly woman turned to Erica and asked, "And you, my dear? How did you get into such a difficult profession? It doesn't seem to be a woman's business. It's the first time I've seen a woman behind the wheel, to be honest." Erica waved her hand dismissively and replied, "Well, Mrs. Mans, life happens that way. I was left without parents. My mum died when I was 8, and I grew up in an orphanage. When I fell in love, got pregnant, and Gregor turned out to be a scoundrel. He left me as soon as he found me, afraid of taking responsibility, so I was left pregnant and alone. As for cars, I've loved them since I was a kid, so I learned to drive. I enjoy it, and they pay me good money." Mrs. Mans shook her head sympathetically and said, "So you're not just a female taxi driver, but also a pregnant taxi driver. Poor you, my sorrowful one. It will be difficult to take care of a newborn alone. Is there no one to help you?" Erica just smirked and replied, "I'm used to it. I'll manage. I'll save up money for the baby and childbirth. Besides, my profession will always provide for me." As they arrived at their destination, a grey public building with a high fence, Erica read the name on the gate and gasped. It was a nursing home. She felt unbearably sorry for the poor elderly lady who was forced by loneliness and illness to move there. Erica turned off the car and helped Mrs. Mans out. Then Erica took out her suitcase and brought it to the gate. The elderly woman lowered her head and said, "All right, Erica, this is my final stop. I'm here forever. The only good thing is that I won't be here long because I'm so sick. Goodbye, my dear. Take care of yourself and your baby, and never push him away from you, no matter what happens, so as not to be like me, unneeded by anyone." The girl's heart snapped, and tears came to her eyes. She hugged the old woman and whispered, "Mrs. Mans, can I visit you?" The woman only waved her hand and said, "Go away, never mind, you have your own worries." The woman began to take out a worn purse to pay, but Erica waved her hands and said, "No, no, put it away. I will not take money from you. Good day to you." She quickly got into the car and drove away, so as not to hurt her soul even more. In the evening, after a quick snack and a shower, the girl finally stretched out her swollen legs and hoped to sleep, but she couldn't. Before her eyes stood the unhappy Mrs. Mans, waving goodbye to her. Lord, how pitiful for her. Tears are coming to my eyes. A pleasant, intelligent woman, and she was left all alone. What a daughter she has who has completely forgotten her mother. It's incomprehensible. Erica closed her eyes and began to go over the fragments of her unhappy childhood. Erica's mother had died very early. Despite this, the period spent with her was the best of her life. Her mother's name was Cindy, and she worked as a cleaner in a roadside cafe. She was always exhausted to the limit. In addition, the hated stepfather significantly poisoned their lives. Tom drank, debauched, called Erica an alien brat, and beat her mercilessly. The mother felt sorry for the girl and tried to protect her. The house was always tense with an agitated atmosphere. Cindy tried to pamper her daughter, secretly buying her sweets and toys so that her husband would not see. Erica begged for 100 times to divorce this sadist, crying, "Mummy, let's leave him, please. He's bad. He does not love us. I'm afraid of him. Why do we live with him?" The tormented woman only cried quietly and stroked the head of her child. "I know, my daughter, that Tom is not good, but we have nowhere to go. This is his home. Your mum is unlucky. I got involved with a scoundrel and everything went wrong. So you'll have to put up with it. We can't go nowhere." And then her mum died unexpectedly from a heart attack while at work. Her stepfather buried her, but his little stepdaughter was like a thorn in his side. The girl tried to stay out of his sight and would sometimes quietly hide under the bed to avoid being noticed by the drunken stepfather. Her life became unbearable as he continuously oppressed and abused her, calling her a sponger and a freeloader. Normal sleep and studying were out of the question. She often sought refuge with the neighbours from the tyrant until they finally called the guardianship service. Erica was immediately taken to an orphanage, and her stepfather was glad to be rid of her. In the orphanage, Erica had to fight to stand up for herself and was punished repeatedly for that. Over the years, she became a tough girl who loved cars and would confidently race on an old moped that the janitor, Mr. Collins, sometimes allowed her to use. The boys respected her, considered her a good friend, and taught her how to understand spare parts and rebuild the engine. Her appearance was also consistent with her character: a short haircut, sneakers, and a leather jacket. Nevertheless, Erica's face was beautiful, with deep brown eyes, plump lips, and dimples on her cheeks. Her smile was also charismatic. Many guys admired this brave and courageous girl, who could easily change the spark plugs and rebuild the carburetor. When the educators informed Erica that her stepfather had died in a drunken rage, she did not feel 1/100th of a fraction of sympathy for him. She even rejoiced that he was no longer on earth. After all, if not for his terrible attitude towards his mother, perhaps she would still be alive. She had been constantly on edge, and no heart could withstand such stress. After graduating from the orphanage, Erica was assigned a cramped, tiny apartment in an old building. At first, she was very upset. The sight was appalling: holes in the walls, hordes of cockroaches, shabby wallpaper, and broken chairs. However, it was not in Erica's character to give up. She did not sit idly by, and thanks to her friends, fixed it up. She plastered the walls, filled the holes with putty, and pasted fresh wallpaper. It became bearable to live there. Erica passed her driver's license exams for the first time. Then she got her driver's license and went to look for a job. It was difficult for her as a girl without driving experience. No one wanted to hire her. Finally, she was lucky enough to get a job as a driver forwarder for a small company. The woman owner cheerfully winked at her and said, "There is no such thing on earth that women can't handle." Erica turned out to be an excellent driver and always kept the car in good working order. Customers were satisfied, but the salary was not enough. Therefore, Erica decided to try herself as a cab driver. Among the driving community, there was a rumour that cab drivers earn good money and tips, but it is also hard work that not everyone can handle. At first, Mr. Robbins, the owner of the taxi park, laughed at the stubby, daring girl with a short haircut. Then he said, "Now, I'll give you a little exam. If you pass, I'll take you on, and if not, don't be sorry." He made an improvised obstacle course for her with other cab drivers. They laid out old tyres on the road in the form of a snake and opened a narrow garage. The satisfied owner commanded, "There, 3 laps on this route, then turn around and drive backward into the garage. You've got 5 minutes to do it all. Keep in mind the transmission is manual. Your time is up." Half of the taxi park gathered around to watch this spectacle. Every second driver thought to himself, "Yes, I would hardly cope. The path is too cool, and it's difficult to go into the garage without proper skill. There are only a couple of centimetres on the sides. However, Erica surprised them all by passing the exam with flying colours. The cab drivers thought that the girl would be confused and unable to pass the test, but that was not the case. Erica easily jumped into an old Ford, smiled, and without a single mistake completed the task. She impressed all the men. Even Mr. Robbins opened his mouth and scratched the back of his head. "Yes, well done. A deal is a deal. I'll hire you. But beware, there are few new cars. As a trainee, I'll assign you a fairly old one, and you can drive it as you wish. But you'll be responsible for any repairs. My drivers get under the hood by themselves. There's a car mechanic on duty, but he can't cover all of them. All right, I'll see you at 8 for your shift on Monday. But I don't think you'll last long. We've never had women here before." At first, the men coaxed the dispatcher, and Erica was given the most problematic orders, such as transportation of drunken people or nervous, hysterical ladies with whom it was impossible to negotiate. Or, for example, she could be sent to the suburbs at night. Everyone was waiting for this stubborn girl to give up, break down, and leave the cab service. But all in vain. Erica did not complain about anything. Moreover, it was obvious that this work was her pleasure. The old car often failed, but the breakdowns did not stop Erica. She always rolled up her sleeves like a man and dug under the hood, often staying at work much longer than she should. As a result, she gained the respect of her colleagues, and they tried to help to support her. And if they made jokes, it was in a kind way, more for laughs, without any malicious intent. So the girl worked as a cab driver for 3 years without tiring. And 6 months ago, Erica's friends decided to make her a birthday present and invited her to a bikers meeting. They knew that Erica would be delighted, and this was better than any present for her. Indeed, she was fascinated by the show. Powerful motorcycles, brutal men with thick beards in leather jackets and black jeans, looking like real Vikings. It was there that she met Gregor. He too was among the invited spectators. The young people quickly found a common language and became friends. Erica immediately liked Gregor, a strong, muscular, confident man. He was a volleyball coach, and motorcycles were his hobby and passion. Gregor almost immediately liked the girl, especially when she dashingly made a couple of laps on the bike. Young people began to meet, and romance erupted, stormy and passionate. Erica was not initially bothered that Gregor did not offer her anything serious. They just loved each other and enjoyed life to the fullest. What's the hurry? They could rent a motorcycle and ride around the city all night in the wind. Erica generally loved freedom, speed, and extremes. At such moments, adrenaline was off the charts, and it seemed like happiness. They loved each other passionately and fiercely, and each time was like the last. Everything burst like a soap bubble instantly when Erica realized she was pregnant. Gregor did not swear or shout. He just shamefully disappeared from the horizon, did not pick up the phone, and pretended not to know her when they met. Not only that, he immediately found a replacement for Erica, a rich girl. Erica saw with her own eyes how her ex-lover was kissing another woman in front of everyone, and it became clear to her that everything was over between them. Erica was so bitter, hurt and scared that she even considered doing something rash at first. She recalled her joyless childhood and how her mother could not manage alone. She realized that she had nowhere to turn for help as well. So why start down this path? To condemn the child to a life of agony? Erica even went to the clinic and signed up for the termination, but the day before, an incredible event forced her to radically change her mind. Erica was giving a ride to a passenger. Judging by her colourful scarf and long dress, she was a gypsy. As the woman was getting out of the car, she touched Erica's palm and said, looking intently into her eyes, "Everything will be all right, my dear. Don't be sad. A son will be born, and then a daughter. You won't have to wait long. Your happiness is already on your doorstep." The woman left the car, and Erica kept sitting there, frozen as if she were a statue. It cannot be said that the girl unconditionally believed the gypsy. She was not of that character, but nevertheless she did not go to the clinic and kept the child. She firmly decided that she would raise him herself, without any scoundrels like Gregor, or even worse, nasty stepfathers. After she made the decision, it became much easier for her. She had a goal to earn as much as possible so that it would be enough for the first time to sit with the child until he went to daycare. So she worked hard and did not spare herself. She had no toxicosis at all, but her back often ached and her legs swelled a little from sitting for long periods of time. Mrs. Mans was also on her mind, and one day Erica thought, "I should visit her. It won't cost me anything, and it will be nice for the elderly woman. She must be sad and lonely there." Erica understood better than anyone how bad it was in such places, even if they fed and clothed her. The next day she took an hour out of her schedule, bought a nice bouquet of flowers and some fruit, and went to see the old woman. Mrs. Mans was so happy to see her that she burst into tears. She hugged the girl as if she were her own granddaughter and said, "Thank you, Erica. You have a kind heart. You didn't forget the old woman. It's so sad here. Everything's so strange. At home the walls healed me, but here it's a pity I have no health left at all. I can't eat properly. My hands are shaking. I spill everything on myself." They chatted a little and Erica went back to work, but the happy Mrs. Mans did not let go of the bouquet of flowers until nightfall, sitting dreamily by the window. From that day on, Erica visited Mrs. Mans almost every day for a little while, and on weekends she could stay with her for half a day. The girl noticed that it was cold in the ward and brought warm woolen socks and a shawl to Mrs. Mans. The elderly woman was touched by such care and began to call Erica her granddaughter. Every day they grew closer to each other. They would sit in the park of the boarding house for a long time and talk to each other. They often crumbled a loaf and fed the pigeons, who enjoyed their treats. One day Erica asked the old woman for advice on caring for the baby, and Mrs. Mans shared her wisdom and personal life details. "I look at you, Erica. You look so much like Cindy, my daughter. I loved her so much. Who would have thought it would turn out like this? She was smart, she studied well, and we had such high hopes for her with my husband. Where did that ugly foreigner come from? Arthur, damn him, he made my girl's head spin, and just imagine, he was married. Cindy couldn't resist, she went on a wild spree. Soon, as if by bad luck, she got pregnant. When my husband found out, it was such a scandal. He said she disgraced our family and brought shame upon us. That scoundrel denied everything and almost immediately disappeared. He said, 'I don't know anything. It's not my child. Who knows from whom your daughter got pregnant?' Cindy was mortally offended by us for going to him to find out the truth, and she left after him. That's the whole story. I haven't heard a word from her anymore. Where is she? How does she live? I don't know anything. 100 times we regretted scolding her. We should have accepted her. We could have raised a grandson together and forgotten everything in time. She's not the first and she's not the last. So don't even think about regretting the baby. Love him, raise him, and the most important thing is that you're together. When he grows up, there will be someone to give you a glass of water in your old age." 3 months had flown by. It was the day off, and Erica had been in the kitchen since the morning. Though she didn't know how to cook, Erica tried to make sure the cutlets wouldn't burn. She wanted to treat Mrs. Manns to something homemade. Suddenly the phone rang. "Erica Clark? It's from the nursing home. Mrs. Manns gave us your number yesterday. She suddenly felt bad and unfortunately died during the night. Please accept our condolences. Who will take care of the funeral? Does she have at least distant relatives?" Erica silently hung up the phone, unable to answer. She sobbed and felt terrible, as if she had really lost her grandmother. Without hesitation, she spent the money she had so scrupulously saved for the birth to take the old woman on her last journey, as befitted. Her conscience was clear. Erica was especially touched by the dried flowers from her bouquet, lovingly placed between the pages of Mrs. Mann's prayer book, which was given to her by the nurse. To avoid being so dreary, Erica went to work, taxiing day and night, until Mr. Robbins literally chased her to maternity leave. "Erica Clark, are you completely out of your mind? Or maybe you've decided to give birth right at the workplace? Stop it and go on maternity leave for good, or we'll have to deliver the baby. Don't worry, we'll always find a place for you when the baby grows up. We need people like you." So Erica had to go on maternity leave. The very next day, a notary, a middle-aged man with a folder in his hands, suddenly came to her home. What he told the woman shocked her. It turned out that Mrs. Manns had left a will and signed over her house to Erica. Along with the will, he gave her a letter. "I've been instructed to hand this to you personally. Here are the keys and documents. Now you are the rightful owner of the house. Congratulations. Excuse me, I have to go. I have a lot to do. Goodbye." The bewildered Erica sat down in an armchair, opened the letter with shaky hands and began to read it. "Dear Erica, it so happens that you have recently become the closest and dearest person to me. You can't even imagine how important and necessary your visits were to me. It is so warming to know that someone needs you. Thank you for your kind heart, nice presents, and heartfelt conversations. You just warmed up my senile soul, frozen from loneliness and indifference. So the least I can thank you is my old house. I hope you will not sell it for nothing, but restore it and live in it with your child. I would like that very much. It has a piece of my soul in it. And I'll also give you a piece of advice. If you want to heat the fireplace in the fall, don't be rushing and take a good look at it. Goodbye, darling. I'll give you a big hug. Take care of yourself and the baby. Sincerely loving you, Mrs. Manns." Erica wept quietly and remembered the elderly woman's dry hands and eyes full of inexpressible longing. Active innately, Erica, despite the impressive term of her pregnancy, decided to move into Mrs. Mann's house and slowly put it in order. She had nothing to do in the four walls of a tiny apartment, and the baby would be better in his own yard, in the fresh air. Erica took a cab and moved all her things to her new home. In fact, the woman was terrified about the future. She didn't have much money, and there were such expenses ahead. How could she get rid of it? But as much as she tried to think of a solution, nothing useful came to mind. To keep her mind clear of bad thoughts, Erica started a general cleaning, slowly dismantled cabinets and shelves and put things in order. She found an old gramophone on the mezzanine and a bunch of records, and she enjoyed the works of Bach and Beethoven. For her, it was all so unusual and interesting. In the old lady's closet, Erica found a gorgeous turquoise-coloured lace dress and guessed it was Mrs. Mann's daughter's, who had disappeared somewhere. Probably Mrs. Manns had cherished it all her long life as a reminder of her daughter. The house turned out to be quite spacious, and it was filled with the spirit of antiquity. and it was clear that Mrs. Mann's husband had a talent for design and golden hands. Everything was done with quality and conscientiousness, and only minor restoration was needed despite the house being decades old. Erica decided to convert one of the rooms into a nursery and began to renovate it. Paul, one of the cab drivers from Erica's work, offered to help her. They had recently become good friends. The man had divorced for a year because his wife left him for a lover, so he never hurried home. They often repaired cars together or just talked. And now, helping with repairs, Paul watched Erica dashingly roll out wallpaper, climbing on a stepladder and supervising the process. She was so funny, wearing a kerchief and a striped blouse. Her belly stuck out funny, looking like a small watermelon. Paul sincerely admired that restless and active woman.
Erica, I'm amazed at you. Where do you get all this energy? My ex-wife used to get tired just doing the dishes. But you're like an airplane, running around the house, repairing. And you're pregnant. Good for you.
In fact, Paul had long been in love with Erica, even when he first saw this daring young beauty, who dashingly raced in an old Ford at the driving test. He liked everything about her: her angularity, straightforwardness, diligence and charisma. But he couldn't confess his feelings, especially when he learned that Erica was pregnant and her boyfriend had left her. He didn't want to intrude on her feelings. He realized that it was not the right time, and she wouldn't understand. It was hard enough as it was. So he decided to be there for her as a best friend and let time show what would happen. Meanwhile, Erica did not notice his fiery feelings, as she did not care about them. Days went by and it was getting colder, so one day Erica decided to make a fireplace. "Paul, could you bring a couple of piles of firewood and let's try to light it up? Maybe before winter comes. I should call a chimney sweep if there are any problems." While Paul worked outside with the wood, a restless Erica couldn't stay still. She climbed inside the fireplace with a flashlight, despite her huge belly, to check if it had crumbled from old age. Suddenly she found an object and began to pull it. Eventually she fell to the floor, along with a pile of dust and soot, and began to sneeze. But curiosity got the better of her, and she immediately began to unwrap the mysterious package. It was a box. She opened it and gasped. There were all sorts of jewellery there, gold chains, bracelets and stones, and gold coins. Erica shrieked. "Oh my goodness! There's a fortune here! This is a gift from Mrs. Mann's. So that's what those words in the letter about the fireplace were about. And I was a fool and forgot about them immediately." At the very bottom, in a cellophane bag, were old black and white photos. Erica looked through the pictures. Here was Mrs. Mann's, and this was apparently her husband. Here they were together. But who was this? Oh, it can't be. It says it's her daughter Cindy. But that's my mother. I remember her well. How can that be? There can only be one explanation. Mrs. Mann's is my grandmother, and I'm her granddaughter. And my mother is her daughter Cindy, about whom she spoke with such warmth. Unbelievable. Paul entered the house and froze on the threshold. Erica was sitting, grimy as a little houseboy, right on the cold floor and crying, not noticing anything around her. She was clutching some photos and swaying from side to side. A jewellery box was lying next to her. A frightened man ran up to Erica and began to shake her, trying to lift her up and shake her off. "God, Erica, did you fall? Why did you go up there yourself? You're restless. I would have helped. You can't sit in the cold. What's the matter with you? Where did you get all this stuff?" But the woman didn't hear him and only whispered, "Mummy, that's my mummy. Do you understand? Mrs. Mann's, who I took care of before she died, turned out to be my grandmother. I just found out now." Paul was confused and didn't know what to think. He had never seen Erica like this before. Erica was in such a state that Paul thought, maybe she's delirious. Did she hit her head? Or is it during pregnancy that this happens? It's hard to understand these women. He went to the kitchen and after a minute, he brought Erica a glass of water. Here, drink it and calm down. And tell me everything is in order, otherwise I'll think you've gone crazy. Soon Erica finally came to her senses and began to tell Paul the whole story, from the beginning. Now it was the man's turn to be surprised. What a plot! It's time to make a TV series, he whistled. Wow, Erica, so you're a rich heiress now. Congratulations. What will you do with such money? Will you sell the house or keep it? The woman twisted her head and replied, No way! This is my family nest, as it turns out. My roots are here. My grandparents lived here, and my mum grew up here. Besides, my grandfather built it with his own hands, and he put his heart and soul into it. I want to restore everything, but leave it as it was originally planned. Now I'll live here, and then my children. I'll donate some of the money to the nursing home. After all, no matter how you look at it, they really do a good deed and help alleviate the suffering of the elderly in their last days of life. And they don't have enough funding. I saw everything with my own eyes. I also dream of a new car, and I need to put aside a lot for childbirth. In general, my head is spinning with all this. I have not yet come to my senses. Paul suddenly looked intently at her and said, You know what, Erica? Marry me. I've been loving you for a long time. You'll give birth to a boy, and we'll live like everyone else. I'm all alone after my divorce without a family. All day long I'm either spinning the steering wheel or getting bored in an empty apartment. Erica suddenly jumped up and down and exclaimed, Paul, it's no joke. I'm carrying someone else's child, not yours. Are you sure you can accept, love and raise him as your own? That's just it. Do you know how I grew up? Shall I tell you? I was beaten and abused so badly by my stepfather that I was taken from him to the orphanage. He never called me anything but a little brat. I hated him so fiercely that when I heard from the nurses that he had been drunk and burned alive, I didn't feel sorry for him one bit. Can you imagine? I'm so sorry. But no, I don't want my baby to have that kind of childhood. And I'll tell you more. I'm not my mum, and I'll smack anyone who hurts my child. And that's the end of it. I have to live alone for the rest of my life. And let's end this conversation. Or do you want to propose to me out of the blue because of money? I do not understand. What's the catch? Paul was deeply offended and turned pale. He stammered, Why do you judge everyone by one person? You shouldn't do that. Can't you see how hard I'm trying to make you notice that I love you? What does your money have to do with me and my feelings? What the hell are you talking about? Just say so if you don't like me. You've turned me into a sadist and a greedy demon. You can live like you want, with your obnoxious temper, as you wish. Erica struck a pose and pointed to the door, saying, Okay, thank you for your help. Have a good day. I won't keep you any longer. Paul bulged his eyes and also shouted, Have a nice stay. And so they parted, shattered to pieces, when only an hour ago they were peacefully gluing wallpaper. Erica fell tiredly onto the sofa. She was angry. Well, let him roll. We'll live on our own, won't we, Sonny? We don't need anyone. These men are nothing but trouble. She stroked her stomach and felt better. The unbearable longing receded, and Erica went through the pictures she had found inside the fireplace. Her mother was so young and happy in the pictures. Mummy, how could it be? You had such great parents. Why did you break up with them forever? Yeah, the grandfather looks like a strict and serious man. It's clear that there was no fun with him. Erica clutched these pictures as the most precious thing she had, and in fact they were pieces of her family's history. A couple of days later, Erica actively began to fulfill her wishes and sincerely thanked her grandmother for her generous gift. She transferred a decent sum to the account of the nursing home and bought a new car. She hired specialists, and they started restoring and repairing the house according to her personal sketches. But the closer her due date approached, the harder it became for her to focus. Erica became clumsy, and it was harder and harder for her to get up in the morning. And most importantly, no matter what she was doing, her thoughts still returned to Paul. She had already regretted many times that she had treated him so harshly, insulted him, and offended him for no reason. Because in reality, he had helped her so much. And if you put your hand on your heart, she really liked him, in the depths of her heart. Her sadistic stepfather and Gregor's despicable act had completely discouraged her from letting any man into her soul. She had built a brick wall around herself and panicked at the thought of being offended, deceived, or betrayed again. Paul also missed Erica. This bold and self-sufficient woman had fallen deep into his heart. He realized with his mind that in many ways she was right and he had chosen the wrong moment, as if on purpose. Taking responsibility for someone else's baby was a complicated matter, but he was ready to try, to make every effort to accept and love this little man who was about to be born. But unfortunately, she didn't even want to listen to him, and still, no matter how angry he was with her, his heart wanted to go where she was. He was worried because the birth was coming, and Erica was all alone in the house. How would she cope? Anything could happen, right? Many times he had looked at the cherished number in the phone book, but he never called. One day, while Paul was reassembling a car in the garage, he overheard other drivers' conversations. "Have you heard, men? Our Erica gave birth yesterday. A boy. Mr. Robbins was told about it by an acquaintance. We should get together and congratulate her properly. She's a good girl." Paul's stomach turned upside down. He threw the nuts and wrenches away and ran to wash up. Then he bought a bouquet of beautiful roses, all sorts of goodies, and rushed to the maternity hospital. On the way he thought, "To hell with this stupid pride. I'll try to declare my love for her again. Whatever happens, I'll congratulate her at the same time." He resented them for a long time in the lobby, wondering why they did not want to let him see Erica. He persuaded them this way and that, and finally he managed to beg the nurse to see Erica at least for a minute. Erica was lying in the ward preparing to feed when a nurse came in and whispered to her, "There, your husband is too active. He tortured me with a request to see you. Now is not the time to visit, but as an exception, as long as there are no bosses, just a couple of minutes. Otherwise I'll be punished." Erica was stunned, her heart fluttering. Did Paul forgive me? Is he angry? Before she could think of anything more, Paul opened the door, scooped her up in an armful, and kissed her tenderly. Then he handed her a bouquet and a bag of fruit and blurted out, "Congratulations, Erica, now you won't get rid of me for nothing. Marry me. I swear I'll love your child like my own. You'll never regret your choice. I can't live without you, even though your temper is unbearable and you're not a good cook. I can't eat pancakes and cutlets, but I still love you." Erica laughed and replied, "Well, you're really something, Paul. But yes, I agree, and please forgive me. I said a lot of unnecessary and terrible things to you then, and I regret it very much. It's just hard for me to learn to trust men again. It has nothing to do with you. I really like you too, honestly, but I was afraid to admit it to myself. Well, you need to go now. or they'll scold us." "Wait," said Paul with a happy smile. "What are we going to name our son? Mind you, I'll put him in my surname, as it should be. You're mine and his mine. That's it." Erica realised that with such a man she would not be lost, and happily replied, "We will call him Martin. Run, Daddy. We'll be discharged in a couple of days." Immediately after discharge from the hospital, Paul and Erica got married and began to live at Mrs. Mann's house. The wedding was celebrated at home in a small circle. The whole taxi fleet was gathered. Mr. Robbins made beautiful toasts, and everyone wished happiness to the young family. At the height of the fun, the baby woke up, and a crying came from the nursery. Erica immediately ran to the child. She was not there for quite a long time. Paul hesitated. "Shall I go or not?" He was afraid to hold the baby, fearing he might do something wrong. The man took a deep breath, composed himself and entered the nursery. He stood quietly on the threshold, watching Erica feed Martin. He was amazed at the transformation that had taken place in his wife. Before him sat not an angular, boyish girl in a fancy leather jacket, but a tender and loving mother whose eyes radiated happiness. Pregnancy and childbirth went in Erica's favour. She became feminine and serene. The baby finished feeding and began to twist and wrinkle adorably, moving his lips. Paul asked quietly, "Can I hold him?" Erica smiled, nodded, and carefully handed the baby to him. The man's hands trembled with fear as he stroked the baby's cheeks and nose and rocked him gently. Martin fell silent and closed his eyes, falling asleep. Paul returned him to the crib and whispered, "Sleep, my son. Daddy is here and won't let anyone hurt you." Erica hugged Paul and whispered, "Thank you for being with me, Paul. It's so wonderful. Everything will work out for us. At least, I will try very hard." As they returned to their guests, the tipsy Mr. Robbins immediately shouted, "Cheers!" Paul hissed at him, "Shh, shh, shh. You'll wake my son. He just fell asleep." Mr. Robbins tempered his enthusiasm and said more calmly, "Well done, Paul. You're a real man. I respect you, and I wish happiness to your family." At first it wasn't easy. Paul and Erica had no experience with the baby. They didn't sleep well and they sometimes quarrelled. But at the same time, Paul, more and more often, caught himself thinking that he loved the baby truly, as a native son. Now he hurried home from work and always bought Erica a present, even if it was a chocolate bar or a small bouquet. He loved to see her happy and hugging him. And Erica, kissing her husband goodnight, often thought, no matter what anyone says, being on the same wavelength with men is fun and interesting, but being a beloved woman in the hands of a strong and reliable man is much better. Now she knew for sure that she could not find a better father and husband.